That day, magical gates to dungeons suddenly appeared in the air. Behind each gate was a completely different world, filled with countless terrifying monsters of all shapes and sizes, and the creatures inside poured out en masse. The only ones who could stop them were those who had awakened magical powers. They used their abilities to fight together, defeating the invading illegal monsters. In that fierce battle amid melee beasts and flying monsters filling the sky, the heroes of one team stood shoulder to shoulder. Searching for gold Anon Vaunt, searching for gold Laudia Baco. Each had different powers. Some could control fire. Searching for gold Nathaniel Cavio could command the wind to fight the flying monsters. Searching for gold Yako Hieti and an unidentified girl with a cold face fought heroically with a thunder spear. After intense fighting, the five of them stood on the same front when a monster suddenly leapt forward and attacked a civilian with no mana. The person fell to the ground, screaming in panic. Someone looked at Bako and urged her to help the civilian. Hey, go help the people in trouble. But Bako was indifferent, propping her chin on her hand and lazily replying, there are too many. While they hesitated and passed responsibility, the greenish monster raised its claws toward the person kneeling face down, clutching their head and trembling. Just as it seemed the monster would crush them, a foot appeared from nowhere and drove straight into its face with a devastating kick, denting one side of the creature's visage. It was blasted away, slamming into a wall and creating a cloud of dust. A tall man in formal attire with a long cloak appeared. He slightly tilted his head to the man on the ground and smiled, asking, are you all right? Then he said confidently to his teammates, I'll handle this. Searching for gold Misato Kyosuke. With a single clack, Kyosuke sprang from the ground, concentrated power into his right hand, and aimed straight at the dense cluster of monsters below. His eyes flashed with a cold light. Kyosuke unleashed a flurry of strikes, targeting their weak points, and wiped out the monsters in a single blow. Teammate Hideki watched in amazement and exclaimed, he's incredible, facing so many monsters alone. Kavio stood silently behind, observing without a word. The woman in the tight red outfit wasn't very surprised either. Her gaze was fixed on the gate. With time attribute magic, Kyosuke could see the future. He knew what the monsters would do next. They all reached the same conclusion as they watched Kyosuke rush forward to destroy a dragon-like fire-breathing monster while keeping a confident smile. That person was no longer human. The battle paused temporarily when the monsters that had come out of the gates were all annihilated. Their corpses lay scattered over the city's rubble. Kyosuke led the group searching for gold up to a giant snake-bodied monster right in front of the gate. He told his teammates, all right, then he swung his arm and severed the monster's head in a single blow. Is that the last one? Kyosuke asked confidently. With this power I can protect everyone's peace. He put his hand on the gate, opening the entrance to the dungeon. Now I'll seal the gate. But as soon as he finished speaking, a strong force hit and flung him through the gate. Kyosuke was dazed, kneeling and bracing one hand on the ground to absorb the impact, but he still slid a long way. When he looked up, he could only just see the other side of the gate, where his teammates were sealing it shut. Kyosuke frowned, not understanding what had happened. What is this? His eyes showed astonishment. I've never seen a future like this. Kyosuke approached the sealed gate and looked at his teammates. Everyone, were you conspiring together? Why would you do that? Kavio laughed with delight. Now he and the others no longer needed to hide their greedy, cruel smiles. He stood among the five, hands in his pockets, sneering. It's precisely because you didn't know that you were betrayed like this. Kyosuke tried to stay calm and asked back, what? The woman in red glanced arrogantly. You're a level 100 monster who can use time magic. Bako curled her lip and added, we just want to earn money safely. DS gritted his teeth in resentment, and yet you kept wanting to help people. Hideki pointed accusingly, you put us in danger like this. And Kavio concluded, but today will be the last time. He raised his hand in farewell, then proudly turned his back and left with Kyosuke's former teammates, never to meet again. On this side of the gate, Kyosuke kept punching at the seal, watching the shadows of the traitors as they left. He still held a faint hope. Are you serious? Let me out of here. Kyosuke painfully wondered, did you betray me over such reasons? Memories of standing side by side flooded back. The six of them had been so happy and harmonious. As the leader of the Search for Gold team, I only did my best to protect the world and protect everyone. I always fought on the front lines. Kyosuke gritted his teeth and kept punching harder at the seal. His eyes flared with rage. Why? Before he could find an answer, the howls of monsters charging like hungry beasts sounded from behind. Kyosuke spun around, struck, and killed one. But then he panicked when he discovered a whole swarm of monsters behind him as thick as flies. He activated his ability, his eyes lit up. He saw a future in which he could escape from here. But that future led to his collapse and death. Death beneath the fangs and claws of the monsters. Kyosuke laughed bitterly. It no longer exists, does it? Alone, he faced the horde of monsters frantically charging toward him. Kyosuke gritted his teeth, channeling all his fury into his fists. Kyosuke leaped into the air, preparing to strike down the swarming monsters. but they were as numerous as ants, layer after layer surging up without end. After prolonged fighting, Kyosuke was covered in injuries and collapsed to his knees. He bowed his head, arms hanging limply, blood from his wounds flowing steadily, forming a large pool. I couldn't change the future. He lifted his head, eyes icy cold. Perhaps there was no other choice. Kyosuke looked at the monsters still rushing in. Other than accepting death right, they swarmed forward, tearing at his battered body. Blood spattered everywhere, but Kyosuke kept resisting. He kicked the nearest monster into the air, but countless others surrounded him. I will not die in vain like this. Kyosuke's hand clutched a monster's head as mana gathered. I will be reborn and become stronger. Madly he continued to fight, reaching the peak of his strength. I will definitely take revenge. This wrath I will carve into my heart. Kyosuke swung his fist into the air. Until the day I take revenge and wash away my regrets. A powerful energy surged around Kyosuke's body, shooting from his palm straight into the sky and blasting the surrounding monsters away. His whole body ached, blood flowed from every sense. That light extended and then condensed into a blinding beam. The scene shifted to another place, where someone suddenly opened their eyes. He was wearing a patient gown. He sat up, put on his slippers, and stood. Kyosuke looked at himself in the mirror. A pale-looking teen stared back. He placed his hand on the glass, eyes gleaming with joy but voice cold. It seems the reincarnation succeeded. This patient-clad youth was Kyosuke's new body. He surveyed the room. Is this a hospital? These machines look strange. How many years have passed? If it's been 100 years, I can't take revenge anymore. A look of hatred appeared as he recalled the smiling faces that had betrayed him. Kyosuke noticed something and picked it up, the student ID of this body. It showed student number 120, name Asai Kyo. The info confirmed roughly 20 years had passed since then. Kyosuke's eyes widened in surprise. He read the attribute line for the body's owner, attribute void. Kyosuke immediately broke into a triumphant smile. Heh. That smile gradually grew inhuman, even deranged. He remembered that in his previous life, his teammates feared him for being the strongest with time magic. But Kyosuke realized he couldn't become stronger with that alone. Even seeing the future couldn't reveal the true depth of this power. Void. I can't measure the strength of someone with this attribute using my old ability. He looked down at his new hands. This kid is pathetic, no doubt about it. The void attribute was the strongest, a boundless, unordered space. In his past life, no one possessed it because it was so rare, so no one knew how to train it. Kyosuke looked at the card again. That's why he's still only level 1. He stared at the youthful face on the card and thought, perhaps he was mocked for having no attribute, not just once or twice. Kyosuke placed the card on his chest. Don't worry, kid, I'll make your name renowned across the world as the strongest explorer. With foresight, I know how to train the void attribute. He mobilized the power of the new body. A stream of light surrounded him and lit up the room. With this power, I'll become absolutely strong, and make those traitors regret throwing me to my death. Kyosuke clenched his fists, a sinister smile forming on his lips. Memories of KVO's betrayed expression and the close teammates from his past life surged back. To take revenge on them, I need to level up first. From now on, the Kyosuke of the past is dead. He will be the Kyosuke of the present. He lay back on the bed and closed his eyes. The space turned pitch black. The void attribute, true to its name, involves magic controlling indeterminate space. Its essence lies in making imagination real. Kyosuke focused his mind. Magical energy began to stir. Imagining is something anyone can do, but turning it into reality is hard. Fortunately, this body was badly wounded. Bandages still wrapped the abdomen. If I project the image in my head onto this body. Kyosuke grimaced, trying to concentrate on visualizing. Magical energy flowed in a stream, the light shimmering mysteriously. He pictured each cell being healed by magic. The light moved through every cell of Kyosuke's body, repairing all injuries. The wound on his arm gradually became enveloped in golden light. The energy was beautiful like a galaxy. The wound on his arm quickly healed, the magical energy gradually dissipated. Kyosuke sprang up, joyfully looking at the now healed wound. It's a success. He pressed his thumb to the skin of his right wrist. Since this is only rudimentary magic, the recovery speed isn't high yet. The inside of the body hasn't fully healed. If I use it repeatedly, the level will rise. By continually imagining the healing, the body will recover quickly. The ability to turn imagination into reality will also improve. The magical energy of the void attribute is vast. It comprises many converging elements and can expand the range of matter that can be recreated. Thanks to that, you can create and use all kinds of magic: wind, water, earth, fire, and lightning. One day, the images in your mind will be able to manifest exactly in reality. The mirror-like barrier will no longer stop you. It will shatter, clearing the way for the void attribute to grow vast as the universe. Kyosuke smiled. Right then, a middle-aged doctor holding a chart walked in and froze at the door. You're finally awake. Kyosuke turned to look at him. The doctor hurried over to examine him, saying, Don't move yet. You should have been gravely injured after being attacked by monsters. Kyosuke lifted the blanket and lay back on the hospital bed. So that's what happened to this boy. The doctor looked at him and beamed. Even though you were in critical condition, you woke as if blessed by a saintess's miracle. Kyosuke lifted his head and asked curiously, what did you say, a saintess? The doctor was surprised. You do know, Kyosuke shook his head honestly. The doctor's face flushed with reverence at the mention of her, the saintess of the 5 sacred stars, of course. Kyosuke went blank. I don't know what the 5 sacred stars are either. The doctor adjusted his glasses and frowned down at Kyosuke's chart. Right, you just woke up. Being confused is understandable, he said, then stood. All right, I'll give you a full examination now. I'll go prepare the instruments, just sit tight here. The doctor left the room. Kyosuke immediately threw off the blanket and sat up. Saintess, 5 sacred stars, are they a clan or an adventure group that rose to prominence over the past 20 years? He went to the TV remote on the table. Leveling up is a must, but first he needs to grasp the current situation. He turned on the TV. A news report came on about the level 555 dungeon catastrophe 20 years ago. The screen showed monsters flooding the streets back then. Perfect. A special report on the incident where I was betrayed. Kyosuke watched intently. The culprit mentioned on screen was an image of him from his previous life. The leader of the gold hunting party, a level 100 time attribute user, Masato Kyoakiz. Kyosuke jolted in shock. What? I'm the culprit. What the hell is going on? The screen kept showing monsters pouring out of the gate, ravaging the city. The announcer's voice said he foresaw the disaster but told no one. He planned to exploit the chaos to rule the world. The remaining members of the gold hunting party stopped it from happening. They are the great heroes known as the 5 sacred stars. The image shifted to his 5 former teammates. After a fierce battle, Masato Kyoakizo was defeated and the dungeon was successfully sealed. The newscast continued. It was a miracle everyone knows about. To this day, the 5 sacred stars still lead the world in many fields. Kyosuke stood frozen, staring at the screen. The TV went on. Today we'll invite an expert. He abruptly turned it off. His lowered face reflected on the pitch-black screen. He started laughing and the laughter grew manic. Rage surged within him. Not only did they betray him, they smeared his honor. The blood-smeared scene from back then flashed through his mind. Meanwhile, they were hailed as heroes, welcomed by the whole world and claimed all the glory. The remote shook in Kyosuke's hand with anger. I won't forgive them, never. He gritted his teeth, his eyes full of hatred, all of them. I'll send them all to hell. The hospital room fell silent. Kyosuke took a deep breath and regained his composure. He walked to the bedside cabinet, but I must be careful, I can't let them see me. Kyosuke set the TV remote down. Then picked up his phone. Right. On the phone screen was information about the school this body attended. Kyosuke smiled with interest. The screen lit up just as I thought. The principal of the Adventure Training Academy, one of the 5 sacred stars, is Yako Hyade. Kyosuke gripped his phone, waking up and immediately knowing where I am lucky. He sat on the bed propping his chin to think, but Yako is very cautious. He's not easy to find an opening in. His eyes suddenly flicked to the student ID on the bedside. The card clearly listed his identity and current level. The level gap is too big. I can't defeat him right now. Kyosuke flopped onto the bed, spreading his hand and staring. At level 1 I can't do anything. I have to level up, then I'll find him. He clenched his fist, eyes determined. Just wait, you're my first target, Yako. A few weeks later, sunlight streamed into the room. Kyosuke stood before the mirror, twisting to get his body moving. Great, now I can move without issues. He donned his jacket. The doctor behind him stood stunned. Unbelievable, in just a few weeks he fully recovered. The man happily thought of his idol. Could he really have been blessed by the saintess? Kyosuke tightened his tie, turning his back. No, doctor, his voice was cold. Everything is thanks to my own power. He left the room. Before stepping out the door, he raised his hand. Thanks for taking care of me. The doctor watched him go. Ah, right, take care of yourself too. Kyosuke was discharged and stood under the clear blue sky. Now I've prepared the basics. He put his ID card into his pants pocket. The current level is enough. Warm up a bit, then into the dungeon. He smiled confidently. Sounds good. Kyosuke recalled the doctor's story about this body's circumstances. They said Kyosuke's entire family died in an accident. He slipped his hand into his coat pocket and walked alone along the main road. Poor Kyosuke, he closed his eyes briefly. But for me, this is good. It means I can do whatever I want. Kyosuke stepped forward. Across the street was a dungeon gate. He took out his phone to check the map. Is this the place? After assessing the situation, Kyosuke pulled up his hood and wrapped a scarf over his face. His gaze was resolute. I want to test myself here. He approached the security desk and placed the card on the counter. The guard immediately grabbed his wrist and shouted, Hey, you there. Kyosuke jerked his hand back and glanced coldly. What is it? The guard tensed when he saw Kyosuke's card. You're only level 27. This area requires a minimum level 30 to form a party and enter. And you plan to go in alone, that's suicide. No wonder he reacted so strongly, he was worried. The guard grabbed Kyosuke's wrist again, his voice full of worry and urgency. But Kyosuke just stood there, calm as if it had nothing to do with him. He tilted his head slightly, speaking softly but with conviction. What you say is true, but only for ordinary cases. Right after that, Kyosuke decisively shrugged the guard's hand off, without being rude. He raised his card high so the man could see it clearly. Light glinted off the card's surface, reflecting in his steady eyes. I'm a student of the Rapid Adventure Training Academy. As long as I sign the consent form, it's fine, right? Kyosuke had prepared for this moment a long time ago. He'd studied all the information about entering dungeons while still in the hospital. That's why his gaze was coldly composed now. The guard blinked several times, flustered. Well, that's true, but... The two were still struggling without a solution when suddenly a voice rang out behind Kyosuke. Come on. The voice was loud enough to make both of them turn their heads. Kyosuke squinted and turned to look toward the opposite street. Under the tree, three figures stood with arms crossed, looking unwelcoming. One of them, leaning against the trunk, chuckled and said, "That's enough." The orange-haired guy gestured dramatically. "They're only saying that because they're worried about you." Another man narrowed his eyes and sneered, "Aren't you just a greenhorn? Better know your place." Kyosuke gave a cold smile. A single icy glance was all he gave them. Ignoring them, he turned back to the guard and continued as if the three didn't exist. "I just need to sign here, right?" Kyosuke pointed at the tablet screen. Before the guard could utter a word, Kyosuke picked up the pen and made a decisive stroke under the words, "I agree." Wait, the guard hadn't even touched his hand when Kyosuke set the pen down and turned to leave. His black hair fluttered in the wind, his silhouette proud and erect. "No more problems now, right?" He gave a slight wave to the guard. "Thanks for worrying about me, thanks." The guard watched in alarm as Kyosuke approached the dungeon gate. Gritting his teeth, he spun to the three by the tree and pointed sharply. "Hey, you three, I'm sorry, but please keep an eye on that kid." The shortest one curled his lip, showing annoyance. Why should I follow him just because he's making a fuss? What's it to me?" Before he could finish, the purple-haired guy with glasses, who'd been silent until now, put a hand on his shoulder, smiling slyly. "No need to say more. Actually, this could be fun. If no one is watching then." He pushed up his glasses, his eyes sharp as a blade. The other two immediately caught on. "Whatever happens, no one will know, right?" The three exchanged a look and matching smiles spread across their faces. They quickly ran toward the gate. "That brat acting tough, needs 100 more years of training." The guard, still trusting, cheerfully waved back. "Thanks, I'm counting on you guys." If he knew what kind of people those three were, he'd cry on the spot. After the three entered the gate, they were greeted by a seemingly endless tunnel. Torches dimly lit both sides, casting flickering shadows on the rock walls. But in that stretched-out space, there was no sign of Kyosuke. The glasses wearer squinted with delight, all as usual. The orange-haired one laughed. "Kill the kid and blame the monsters. Too easy." A memory of a previous victim immediately flashed through their minds. A young man sprawled on the ground, blood staining the walls and floor. They stood casually, hands in their pockets, admiring the scene. "Thanks to idiots like those, our pockets keep getting fuller." They excitedly ran deeper inside. 10 minutes passed. All three were out of breath. "The passage has been straight from the start, right?" the glasses wearer asked between heavy breaths. The orange-haired guy nodded repeatedly. "Yes, so why haven't we seen him yet?" Suddenly he stopped and pointed straight ahead. "Look." Not far ahead, Kyosuke was facing a swarm of monsters alone inside the tunnel. What's more, the energy radiating from his body was so strong it made the air vibrate. Kyosuke's gaze was as cold as a blade. He slightly swung his hand, and immediately a strip of fire erupted fiercely, sweeping straight into the monsters. Right after that, he raised his hand to head level and twisted his palm. Magic coiled into a spiraling vortex. With a light thrust, the vortex flared and shot forward, merging with the stream of fire to form a destructive storm. Kyosuke's flames were so powerful that any monster that touched them was incinerated in an instant. The smell of burning flesh filled the tunnel. Within seconds, the large swarm of monsters had been reduced to ashes. The three watchers froze. The glasses wearer gaped. "No, this can't be." The short one stammered. He single-handedly wiped out a bunch of D-rank monsters. The usually composed orange-haired guy couldn't help but smirk in amazement. "Look, a rare drop." Before them, gemstones glittered, piled in a large bag with more scattered across the ground. Their eyes shone like starving cats seeing fish. "If we sell that, we could live luxuriously for 6 months." Seeing Kyosuke calmly stoop to pick up the gems, the three immediately kindled the idea of killing him to steal them. The kid hadn't noticed. What an idiot, those rare drops are ours. Just kill him. In that instant, all three moved quickly. One leapt onto the ceiling, clinging like a lizard. The glasses wearer smiled at his comrades. The short one sneaked into position. All three nodded in signal. 3 streams of magic shot toward Kyosuke. "Now kill him." Kyosuke pulled his mask down, a murderous glint flashing in his eyes. "Damn it." He turned to face them, his voice low but full of killing intent. "You really think that's clever?" With a light step, Kyosuke's whole body seemed to glide. evading the water and wind spells that slice through the air. No matter the era, there are always people who like to steal others' loot. The orange-haired guy and the parted hair one jumped down at the same time, their faces draining of blood. What? He dodged them all. Does he have eyes on the back of his head? The glasses wearer gritted his teeth, summoned a fireball, and lunged behind Kyosuke. Just got lucky, die. But Kyosuke didn't dodge. He spun, concentrating all his power into a punch. The punch struck the glasses wearer's stomach, then a loud slap echoed through the tunnel. The fireball vanished instantly. The glasses wearer spewed blood from his mouth. Was flung like a sack slammed hard into the rock wall, making the whole tunnel tremble. Dust and smoke gradually cleared, revealing a section of tunnel smashed to pieces as if hit by a bomb. Rubble clattered to the floor, producing a cold, echoing sound throughout the space. The glasses wearer, punched away by Kyosuke, still lay sprawled on the tunnel wall, his body twisted like a torn doll. In contrast, Kyosuke stood amid the wreckage composed and untroubled, as if he'd merely shooed away a few annoying flies. He glanced at the unconscious man, his voice low and dripping with murder. For vermin like you, I'll crush you without mercy. The two remaining accomplices froze at those words, their faces going pale. They stood rooted to the spot, not daring to breathe heavily. Kyosuke stomped his foot on the ground, his steps landed like a hammer, and I won't hesitate to use you as stepping stones. His eyes were now bloodshot, cold like the gaze of death incarnate. A killing intent rose, choking the air around them, because the grudge I bear officially begins now. Outside the gate, the sky remained a ridiculous, serene blue compared to the blood-soaked scene in the dungeon. At that moment, another person stepped into the gloomy space. A handsome, haughty man in a long cloak stood with his arms folded, looking around. Yako Hiede's subordinate Joichi Chisai. I came because I heard a student from the academy entered the dungeon alone, he murmured, but after a few more steps his eyes widened. Before him, three motionless bodies, new adventurers, why are they dead here? Chisai frowned, puzzled as he looked at the scene as if a swift massacre had just occurred. What on earth happened? Scene change, late at night, an apartment building still has lights on, inside a small room. Kyosuke sat on the bed, holding his ID card, his cold eyes reflecting the screen's light. In the D-rank dungeon, he had leveled up and tested his void magic. He looked at the newly updated line on his card, new skill, information concealment. Kyosuke's mouth curved, a sly smile showed, not only can it fake my level, it can also erase dungeon entry data. Pretty handy, huh? He lay down, holding up his phone to check the news. A notification popped up on the screen. Tomorrow is the first day of enrollment. Right after that came an old message biting insults. Pay me back a day earlier, hurry up. Worthless, no attributes. Kyosuke frowned, so that's how it is. The next morning, the schoolyard bustled with students. Kyosuke slung his bag and entered the school gate when someone called, Kyosuke. He turned around. A lively, cheerful girl waved and ran up, her smile as bright as sunshine. Kyosuke's former classmate Arin. Good morning, are you feeling better? Kyosuke replied softly, thank you, I'm fine now. Arin breathed a sigh of relief, one hand on her chest. I'm really glad, I was so worried about you. Kyosuke looked at her, his eyes softening briefly. So there are still people who care about me. But that warm moment was quickly cut short. Look who's here. Kyosuke turned his head slightly. Three blue and red-haired guys approached, their faces full of contempt. The one in front sneered, so it's the attributeless guy who barely survived. Since you had to be protected by a weak level one like you, I think you owe us something, right? Kyosuke immediately recognized them, the three from last night's message. Arin stepped forward to block Kyosuke, her hands trembling slightly. Stop, Kyosuke just got out of the hospital. Her action surprised him a little. He looked at her trembling hands. Kyosuke gently placed his hand on her shoulder and stepped forward to stand in front. Thank you, but I'm fine. The two behind burst out laughing. Hey, listen to the little attributeless shrimp talk, hilarious. The leader cracked his knuckles and grinned cruelly. You're just useless, you can't even use magic. Kyosuke replied bluntly, each word sharp as a blade. You lot are the ones who need a reminder of your place. The three immediately fell silent, stunned stiff. Kyosuke stepped forward, speaking softly like a curse. I promised. I'll make my name known across the world as the strongest adventurer. The leader lost control. He summoned a fireball in his hand. What nonsense are you spouting? Arin panicked. No, you can't use magic outside the dungeon. It's against the rules. The other shoved her aside. Shut up. That attributeless trash is the one who's wrong for daring to oppose me. He hurled the fireball straight at Kyosuke. Kyosuke stood still, he didn't dodge. Kyosuke frowned and raised his right hand. Magic exploded. A gigantic fireball formed instantly, 3 times the size of the leader's. The two fireballs collided. Boom. Sparks and embers scattered between them. The two henchmen screamed, impossible, isn't he attributeless? The leader's eyes went wide. What is this? Kyosuke looked at him with empty eyes. That's it. The words, soft as a breeze, pierced his pride. You insolent, you bastard. The leader spun and shouted, hey you lot still standing there, take him down. The two henchmen immediately cast spells, wind and water, toward Kyosuke. And Kyosuke, he didn't bother to put his bag down. He simply raised his hand and used the same type of magic, but many times stronger, to push straight forward. Their attacks were crushed instantly. The three stood as if their feet were bound, trembling. How many types of magic can he even use? Kyosuke snapped his fingers. Now it's my turn. A vast surge of magic flared up behind him, rolling like a storm. He took step after step, like death approaching. Don't worry, I won't kill you. The three immediately turned and ran for their lives. We're doomed, we're doomed, we're doomed. But Kyosuke's voice sounded behind them like a demon from hell. I begged you to help him, didn't I? So what did you do then? Before they could cry for help, Kyosuke grabbed the leader's shoulder. His eyes now showed no emotion. I don't need to hear your answer. Kyosuke clamped his hand over the leader's mouth, making him tremble, sweat pouring like rain. Vermin like you. The leader tried with both hands to pry Kyosuke's hand away but failed. His panicked eyes reflected Kyosuke's still-cold face. You all say the exact same things. He was so frightened he nearly cried. Dust and smoke gradually cleared, revealing the horrifying sight of a tunnel smashed as if struck by a meteor. The glasses wearer who had rushed to attack now lay sprawled on the rock, his body twisted pitifully. And Kyosuke, he still stood there, unbothered, cold, continuing his own hunt as if nothing had happened. He glanced down at the unconscious man, his voice low and choked with killing intent. And so, no matter what you say, I will not stop this fist. Kyosuke's fist clenched, containing not just raw power but the dark synthesis of countless magic systems twisted together, like a storm compressed into his palm. His eyes darkened as he stared straight at the bully still trembling before him. Until it comes down, without a moment's hesitation, Kyosuke lunged. His fist slammed into the leader's face, slap. Blood gushed from his nose like a fountain. His whole body was hurled away as if a rocket were strapped to his back, flying a long distance before crashing onto the road with a thud. Sprawled out, smoke rising gently. Arin panicked, covering her mouth with her hand. The two henchmen immediately rushed over, supporting their unconscious leader who could no longer stand. We're sorry, happy now. The apologies echoed across the schoolyard, trembling and desperate. Once they were a fair distance from Kyosuke, the leader, even with his face smeared in blood, gnawed his teeth and muttered in full rage. Damn, after leaving the hospital, he's completely changed. Kyosuke coldly closed his eyes and let out a soft breath. In the end, he's nothing special. At that moment, Arin peeked her head around to look at him worriedly. After a few seconds' hesitation, the two of them walked down the corridor side by side. But the gazes of the other students made Arin stop in her tracks. They looked at the two with cautious, distant stares, whispering to one another in low voices loud enough to drop hints. Kyosuke frowned. Am I attracting too much attention? As they were about to enter the classroom, a hand suddenly rested on Kyosuke's shoulder from behind. Please wait a moment. Kyosuke turned around. A handsome young man with a stern demeanor, neatly kept hair, proper uniform, the aura completely unlike ordinary students. You're Kyosuke, right? He tilted his head, polite but with a voice as cold as ice. Do you have a moment? Kyosuke narrowed his eyes. Who is he? Noble, what a pain. He forced a declining smile. Sorry, class is about to. Before he finished, the young man cut in. I haven't said my name yet, have I? He stood upright, eyes sharp. I'm Johai, leader of the Cat Nibble Guild. Arin's eyes widened. The Cat Nibble Guild, the guild founded by Principal Yako. The hand on Kyosuke's doorknob froze. Johai continued, I'll ask again. He smiled darkly. Could you spare me a moment, Kyosuke? Kyosuke was silent for a few seconds, then gave a faint smile. If that's the case, then it seems there's no other choice. In an empty classroom, Johai crossed his arms and looked at Kyosuke with a serious gaze. I'll get straight to the point. Were you the one who defeated the group of adventurers found in the D-rank dungeon last night? Kyosuke raised an eyebrow, feigning ignorance. What are you talking about? But inside he suddenly grew wary. That information should have been kept secret. How does he know? Johai continued, I was informed that a student entered the dungeon, so I went to investigate. When I arrived, I found a group of criminals hunting rookies reduced to corpses. He narrowed his eyes, his voice lowered and heavy with gloom. And this morning you used multi-attributes as well, right? Kyosuke chuckled inwardly, so he doesn't know much yet, good. Johai's tone sharpened. Now answer me truthfully, were you the one who took them down? Kyosuke rummaged through his jacket and pulled out his ID card. He shrugged slightly, smiling helplessly. I was attacked unexpectedly this morning, so I don't remember clearly. I'm only level 1. How could I have beaten them? Johai looked at the card. It clearly stated, Level 1. Attribute void. Kyosuke's face looked so harmless, it was hard to suspect him. This nobody dares to waste my time. Johai bit his lip, turned and pushed the door open to leave. Sorry for calling you in. Before leaving the room, he stopped at the door and turned his head. Don't act suspiciously anymore. It's a hassle if you cause more work for me. The door closed. Kyosuke folded his arms and watched Johai's retreating figure. This guy could be useful. The corner of his mouth twitched upward. If he can approach Yako without arousing suspicion, wouldn't he be the perfect pawn? A dangerous light flashed in Kyosuke's eyes. Right, this is the time to test that magic. Scene shifts to a luxurious office. Johai stood straight, reporting to the man seated with his back to him, leaning in his chair, legs crossed, fingers full of rings. The report on last night's incident in the D-rank dungeon ends here. The man turned his head, hair slicked back, sharp-featured face. He frowned. You messed up too, Sai Yako Hideki, principal of the Adventure Training Academy, one of the 5 saints. His voice was as sharp as a blade. I told you to be careful when choosing people to use. Johai bowed deeply. I'm sorry, I'll fix it immediately. Hideki rose, strode closer, grabbed Johai's chin with his ring-laden hand and forced him to look up. His eyes were demonic. Don't forget, if there's a mistake, even you I'll throw out immediately. Why yes, I understand, principal. As Hideki turned away, Johai's face contorted with fear. But the moment the man turned his back. Damn it, why do I have to deal with this pile of trash? Johai gritted his teeth, cursing inwardly. If I'd known it'd be this much trouble, I would have taken more hush money from those guys. Turns out he wasn't a nice person after all. He had accepted bribes from the 3 robbers Kyosuke dealt with. Hideki sat at his desk, frowning. There's something I still don't quite understand. Johai looked up. What is it, sir? Hideki picked up a tablet. You reported that the student must be at least level 3, but... He set the screen down in front of Johai. There was no third-year student who entered the dungeon last night. The screen showed the checkpoint list. There was no record of any level 3 student entering the gate. Hideki put the tablet down and folded his arms. Then perhaps they were killed by monsters while hunting rookies, and you're lying to cover it up. Hideki's voice deepened, sharp as a blade. He clasped his hands behind his back and walked past Sudai. Those words alone were enough to make Sudai's face turn ashen. Hideki stopped before the large window, hands still behind his back. The clear blue sky outside reflected on the glass in stark contrast to the darkness enveloping the room. Rather than thinking one of my weak students could single-handedly defeat the hunters, his voice was low, steady, and absolute. This is the more reasonable conclusion. Sudai widened his eyes as if realizing something. So, is that it? Hideki didn't turn around. His voice sounded icy. Exactly. Unless something extremely unusual happened. Sudai flinched. The 2 words extremely unusual made him immediately recall what he tried to ignore, the level 1 void attribute student ID card of Kyosuke. He swallowed and hurriedly asked, Principal Yako, is there any chance this attribute is specially related to the case? Hideki put his hand to his chin, thinking indifferently, a special attribute, that's also a possibility. Sudai immediately smirked, grinning like he'd struck gold. He placed a hand over his chest solemnly, though his eyes were full of scheming. Principal Yako, please allow me to handle this matter. His target in mind returned once more to the main character, Kyosuke. I'll take care of it quickly and thoroughly. His malicious smile stretched across his lips while a cruel glint showed in his eyes. The torchlight along the walls lit up the entire underground chamber. A group of students was unleashing their power in one direction, where a demon monkey was rampaging and shrieking. I see it running the other way. But the moment the student shouted, the mutated monkey suddenly swelled, its body bloating into a monstrous form. Its glowing red eyes shone with murderous intent. A student standing behind concentrated a stream of energy into his palm, forming a vortex of magic. In an instant, that energy shot straight at the monkey. Bam. The giant beast roared in pain, its body losing control and collapsing to the ground. The trainees trembled, sweat pouring from fear. The one who delivered the finishing blow, Sudai, barked sternly, Trainees, do not break formation. The group collectively relaxed, exhaling in relief and praising, Sudai's amazing. No wonder he was chosen by Principal Yako. Maybe I should apply to the Cat Nibble Guild too. Sudai quietly looked over the pile of fallen beasts. All right, I've cleared this area. The trainees behind chorused, well done. Sudai nodded and turned to leave. I'll leave the rest to you, Roger, then. Sudai stopped, shoved his hand into his coat and took out a strange chain whose pendant emitted a bluish light. Time to get to work. He placed the pendant on his palm. Reveal Asai Kyosuke's location to me. A stream of blue energy flowed into the chain pendant. It immediately shot forward as if pulled by something. The chain's tail snapped taut, dragging Sudai's entire arm forward. Just as I thought, he's far from the other students. Sudai smirked and began to follow the direction the chain pulled. I don't know what he's plotting, but this works in my favor. A twisted thought formed in his mind. If so, no one will suspect his death. An accident in the dungeon, too common, too easy to happen, too convenient. I just happened to find him. Accidents like this happen all the time in the depths. Thinking that, he grinned wickedly and continued striding. Images of the trainee hunters, the trouble since Kyosuke's discharge, and the scene he had seen from afar all flooded back. But more than anything, he remembered the strange tale from the group that Kyosuke had taught a lesson to the other day. Flashback. Sudai stood in the classroom. Before him knelt 3 students, their faces pitifully bandaged. He asked in a bored tone, is this true? The red-haired one screamed as if possessed, it's true, believe me. That attributeless guy used the exact type of magic we use. Not only that, he produced a gigantic flame we'd never seen before, the blonde one recalled, trembling. In his memory, Kyosuke stood towering in the hallway, behind him a gigantic flame many times his size. Sudai fell silent for a moment, unbelieving. Then he stood up and said nonchalantly, all right, my questioning is finished. The three turned pale. How so then? Sudai turned his back, voice cold as steel. Go back to your studies, I don't need weaklings who lose to an incompetent like that. No way, that's not what you. The red-haired kid tried to stand but was held down. The red-haired kid tried to stand but was held down. A blue-haired boy, his face battered, trembled as he said, that one has. He swallowed with difficulty, eyes vacant. Is no longer human. After he spoke, the room fell completely silent. Present day. Led by the chain, Sudai arrived before a vast area littered with demon corpses cleaved down in just a few blows. His footsteps echoed through the space. The fear they described isn't ordinary. He told himself and continued walking, passing by the monster corpses. Grudged like Drej. He must be using a magic tool. Or some dirty trick. Sudai reassured himself, then smirked with satisfaction, thinking of Hideki's arrogant attitude. I will definitely surpass him. One day, I'll stand among the 5 saints, I'll rule the world. That thought swelled like a bubble. His face broke into an ambitious smile, his eyes grew steadily deeper. In Sudai's mind, schemes continued to churn deep in his psyche. To achieve that, I must never let anyone know about my ties to those trainee hunters. And aside Kyosu, the only one who might cause trouble later, I must ensure a small accident happens to him by chance. The corner of his mouth lifted into a devilish grin, almost stretching to his ears. The chain in his hand still slithered like a living creature, leading him deeper into the dungeon area. He must be nearby. At last the chain slowed and stopped, it had found its target. Sudai pulled it back, crouched behind a rock and peeked out. Strange, what is he doing here? But the unfinished thought died in his throat. Sudai's face contorted, his whole body trembling. His eyes widened as if they would burst from terror. Cold sweat poured uncontrollably. Before him, Kyosuke sat atop a heap of monster corpses. He smiled, a slight smile that sent chills to the bone. You're late. Kyosuke propped his hands on his knees, tilted his head and smiled. I've been waiting until I'm bored. You're late. Kyosuke propped his hands on his knees, tilted his head and smiled. I've been waiting until I'm bored. From behind the wall, Kyosuke's voice rang out, eerily calm. So you're thinking he shouldn't have been able to detect my presence, right? Sudai gritted his teeth. He can read my thoughts, no, impossible. He stepped out, trying to steady himself though his voice trembled. Who the hells are you? Kyosuke looked at him with bored eyes. I heard Yako chose you, but you're not as impressive as I expected. Kyosuke's gaze sharpened, his voice lowering with killing intent. The way you hunt rookies and extort them is exactly like that despicable Yako. Sudai's face flushed red with anger. What? How do you know about that? Kyosuke leapt off the pile of corpses, landing as light as a feather. Under the falling light, he seemed to become the shadow of death. Sudai. His voice slow, icy. It seems you enjoy tormenting others, don't you? Kyosuke's gaze seemed to drill into his soul. But you stepped forward. You've never known what it's like to be hunted, have you? The air suddenly turned cold. Now I'll teach you that feeling. Kyosuke declared, his voice sharp as a blade. With this magic, you're going to pay for messing with me. Sudai gritted his teeth and shouted. You're a dangerous bastard. He clenched his fist and summoned a sword. A gleaming golden blade appeared, radiating mysterious power. For my ambition. Sudai lunged forward. I'll defeat you here at any cost. Kyosuke stepped back half a pace. He dodged as if on a stroll, both hands still in his pockets. That's it. Kyosuke's voice was casual, almost mocking. Is that your true strength? He raised his hand, unleashing a gigantic fireball that exploded as if to swallow everything. Sudai swung his sword, still arrogant. You think that level can beat me? But just as he looked up, bam! A bolt of blue electricity shot straight at him. Sudai reacted quickly, raising his sword to block. His foot slipped, a few stones clattering to the ground. Then they began to glow. A ring of golden light surrounded them. What? The stones rose as if lifted by magic and lunged to attack. Sudai roared. Damn it, he can really use multi-attribute magic. His eyes trembled. Your void attribute, just what is it? Before he could finish, Zwish! Kyosuke appeared right behind him. His gaze was as sharp as a blade. Sudai shuddered, immediately spun around and raised his sword to block. Glang! You bastard, Sudai ground his teeth. You're only good at getting in my way. Both were knocked back, skidding a long line across the ground. Kyosuke dusted his coat off, indifferent, your plan. Sudai looked up, wearing a smug smile. That's right, one day I'll surpass Yako. He laughed loudly, wildly. I'll replace him as one of the 5 saints. Kyosuke raised an eyebrow. Why Yako, what about the other 5 saints? Sudai sneered. Because he's the weakest, he was once removed from the 5 saints. Targeting the weakest is the most logical way to seize power. Kyosuke's face filled with contempt. Pathetic. Sudai froze. What did you just say? A layer of eerie blue light flared around Kyosuke. He rested the sword on his shoulder, tilting his head. I feared you might approach Yako before I did, but if your ambition is this petty. Kyosuke's gaze was icy cold. As I no longer have to worry. Sudai flew into a rage, his eyes bloodshot. What's wrong with wanting money? What's wrong with wanting power? What's wrong with wanting women? He charged, screaming madly. Power is what tramples everything, that is the power I want. He swung his sword wildly, shouting. If I become one of the 5 saints, I'll have the right to do anything, even. Sudai laughed maniacally. Learn the saint maiden's weakness and make her belong to me. Kyosuke's gaze instantly turned terrifyingly cold. What you said? Your voice cut through the air like a blade. Isn't worth me listening to any longer. It's time to end this. Zwish. Kyosuke swung his sword in a powerful, killing strike. Sudai was flung violently, his body skidding across the ground. He watched his sword crack and shatter into pieces, his face drained of color. Number impossible, my sword. Kyosuke tossed his sword aside. Thanks to your little rant. The corner of his mouth lifted. I had already prepared that spell. Sudai retreated in panic. Don't come any closer. Kyosuke stepped forward. He raised his hand. Now let's see how well you dance. His dark eyes void of feeling. Absolute hypnosis. Immediately the spell activated. Sudai, who had been screaming madly, froze in place. His body went limp. His eyes emptied. All movement ceased, the entire cavern fell silent. After the hypnosis, Sudai collapsed like a statue, producing a loud thud. Kyosuke stood there, contemplatively watching him. He thought to himself, this magic forces the opponent's spirit to break first, but once activated, everything else becomes easy. He ordered in a calm voice. Stand up. Immediately, each joint in Sudai's arms began to move. His whole body was stiff as a log, yet as if pulled by an invisible force, he was hauled upright. Sudai tilted his head and answered in a hollow voice. Yes, sir, I have stood up. Kyosuke smirked, pleased as he observed the reaction. It seemed the hypnosis had been completely successful. He continued, his voice slow. For now, focus on completing the mission first. I'll give further orders later. Sudai replied in a strange, trembling voice. Yes, I understand. I understand. He seemed slightly uncomfortable from the spell's effects. Kyosuke added, return to your normal manner of speaking. Immediately, Sudai's eyes brightened, returning to a more human state. He turned away, walked the old route, and replied curtly. I will resume leading the group. Kyosuke watched his figure go, a gleam of satisfaction in his eyes. Everything had gone even more smoothly than he had planned. As Kyosuke stepped out of that dark area, a worried voice called out. Kyosuke, where have you been? I've been so worried. Kin ran up, breathless. Kyosuke gave a slight, apologetic smile. Oh, sorry, I was just talking with Sudai for a bit. Kin blinked in surprise. Huh, with Sudai, what were you two talking about? Kyosuke answered nonchalantly. Just a little about how to turn dreams into reality. Kin smiled brightly. So did you get any good advice? The image of Sudai's vacant face under hypnosis flickered in Kyosuke's mind, revealing his amusement though he outwardly remained calm. Yes, very useful. Thanks to it, one of my dreams is now certain to come true. Kin replied cheerfully. I hope your dream comes true soon. Kyosuke smiled. Yeah, I hope so too. Just then, a teacher's voice rang out. The special class is about to end. All students gather up. Kin urged. Let's go, Kyosuke, we can't be left behind. Watching Kin's retreating back, Kyosuke smiled softly. He was truly glad to have attended this class. Because of it, he now had an important pawn, a pawn Yako would never suspect. Kyosuke's smile was gentle, though it hid a barely noticeable triumph. In the principal's office of the Speed Adventure Training Academy, Heidki sat in the large chair, turning around with a displeased look. So, any progress on the case of those apprentice hunters? Sudai stepped forward, bowed respectfully, and handed over a file. Yes, sir, as predicted, a student with a special ability is involved in the incident. It's someone both you and I know well. Attached to the file was the familiar photo of Kyosuke. The student is a Kyosuke, a first-year attribute void. Sadai continued, I've detained and interrogated him. He admitted to using multi-attribute magic to defeat the apprentice hunters. Heidki froze. Multi-attribute magic, what are you talking about? Sadai smiled wickedly, but remained cautious so as not to ruin the plan Kyosuke had manipulated. Come to think of it, it's been a while since we've worked together. You don't want to handle this personally this time, Principal. Heidki thought for a moment, then agreed, his tone eager. It's been a long time since I've tortured anyone. I'll deal with this personally. Sadai was about to speak when the landline rang. Heidki frowned and waved a hand to signal. Go ahead, I'll come later. After Sadai left, Heidki picked up the receiver. Yako speaking. A mocking female voice rang out. Oh, isn't this the great principal? Thank you so much for choosing our company in yesterday's bid. Heidki scowled. Cut the act, Rose. The woman on the line, Rose, CEO of L Company, a member of the Pentagram, chuckled softly. With short, stylish hair and an elegant demeanor. We're partners sharing government subsidy funds after all, why get tense? Heidki sighed, impatient. I'm busy, talk another time. Rose gave a cold laugh. What could someone who runs an academy and lines his pockets like you possibly be busy with? Heidki furious. Watch your mouth. He tried to restrain his anger and said, I'm investigating a student with the void attribute. What can such a failure do? Josei asked in surprise, the void attribute. Hideki didn't explain much, only replied tersely, yes, but in any case it's a special attribute. His expression and tone changed immediately, so anything could happen, right? Rose pondered for a moment, her beautiful face taking on a somewhat frightening expression. She spoke, are you referring to something like Kyoizo's time magic? A familiar name was mentioned. Hideki's face changed when he heard that name. He gripped the phone tightly, eyes full of hatred. Hideki shouted on the other end, don't mention that name, it disgusts me. To avoid being yelled deaf by him, Rose had to push the phone away. She snorted, you're still hot-headed as ever, huh? Her gaze also showed hatred toward that name. She also sympathized with him, but I don't blame you. Since he awakened that power, the balance of power in the adventurer world has completely shifted. Her full red lips curved into a dangerous smile. She had no desire to interfere or obstruct. All right, I'll contact you later. Goodbye. The line on the other end went silent with a dial tone. After hanging up, Hideki's expression turned sour. He threw the phone down on the desk, angrily cursing, selfish fox. But the thing that really made him angry wasn't just Rose, it was the old friend they had just mentioned. He complained, even so, hearing that cursed name again after all these years still makes me furious. Hideki's face darkened, his eyes seemingly scheming. He growled, then isn't now the perfect time to vent this anger. After a while, following Sadai's instructions, Hideki went himself to investigate that special first-year student. He entered the forest, only a few steps away from the factory. When he reached the door, he thought as he walked, now how should I torture him, dousing with water, ripping out fingernails, a string of gruesome punishments flashed through his mind. A lock appeared on the door. Hideki used his fingerprint to activate it. His face looked wicked, anticipating the perverse pleasure of tormenting someone. He smiled slyly, I'll take out all the anger I couldn't unleash on Kyoizo on you. The door activated, he was pleased, good, it's open. Hideki opened the door and said, sorry to keep you waiting, Sadai. But the inside of the factory was empty, with no sign of Sadai, just old tools and spare parts. Unexpectedly, Hideki exclaimed, what's this, there's no one here. While he wasn't looking, Sadai raised his sword to strike from behind. His eyes widened in surprise, but with deep power, he needed only 2 fingers to firmly catch the glowing blade without turning his head. Hideki, furious, his face gray from being betrayed by a subordinate, ground his teeth. It seems you've underestimated me. Probably the arrogance you've gained from all the praise, right? Sadai panicked, his eyes flashing with alarm. The plan he had painstakingly prepared had fallen apart. Hideki erupted in fury. His palms glowed as he prepared to unleash a counterattack. You really think you can defeat me with that? A very long golden chain appeared, coiling swiftly to entangle Sadai. Hideki's eyes were murderous. He wanted the enemy eliminated immediately. He yanked the cord hard, and the chain wrapped Sadai from head to toe, gagging him and hanging him upside down. After binding Sadai, he angrily delivered a kick. No way someone like you could be my rival. Bound tightly and powerless, he was kicked away, unable even to cry out in pain. He stepped closer and said, you chose the wrong enemy, bastard. He struggled, terrified, watching the intruder's every step as Hideki approached, hands clenched in rage. You ruin yourself with foolish ambitions. Suddenly a voice rang out, Roikai still as stupid as ever. Hideki was stunned, his heart jolting. There was another person here he hadn't noticed. He turned toward the interior of the factory and stammered, who's there? From the darkness, Kyosuke stepped out and said, bow to the strong and exploit the weak. He looked at the man before him and mocked, it seems you're still as greedy and stupid as ever. Hideki's eyes widened in anger at seeing someone dare to run rampant on his territory. He threatened, how dare you insult me? I'm the academy principal. He was the same as ever, accumulating power and authority to oppress others. Kyosuke stepped forward and replied coolly, self-destruction through foolish ambition sounds like the perfect self-introduction for you, Yauko Hideki. Hearing that, Hideki boiled with rage, his face flushed and veins bulging. He snarled, who the hell are you bastard? Kyosuke strode out confidently, hands in his pockets, walking slowly. He noticed the boy wore his school's uniform. Hideki yelled, I'll expel you, bring your few students here. The angrier he got, the more delighted Kyosuke became, grinning wickedly. Now calm down. We've finally reached this moment, so let's talk it out slowly, just the two of us. Kyosuke had waited a long time for this day. The deep-seated feud from a past life would be settled gradually. Outside, dusk fell and the trees were tinged with nostalgic gold, a fitting backdrop to resolve old matters. Seeing Hideki losing his temper, Kyosuke calmly proposed, why not have a little chat with me, Yauko Hideki? He looked straight at him and boldly used his name. Though the man was principal of a large school, a mere student dared to call him out. Hideki ground his teeth, you dare mock me. His hands began to glow again, just as when he confronted Sadai. Chunks of earth and stones around the ground were controlled by his power and rose into the air as one. Hideki clenched his fist, eyes flashing with anger. He boasted, I'll show you how wide the gap in power between us is. Take this high-level earth magic. From the ground emerged a gigantic hand modeled after his own, 100 times larger, formed of earth and rock. The giant hand rose high, closed into a massive fist, and hurled forward like a punch. Hideki's pupils glowed yellow as he channeled earth power. His hand clenched into a fist mirroring the giant one, his mouth curling in contempt. A student like you can't possibly dodge this. He thrust the fist toward Kyosuke and shouted, die. Instantly, instead of him having to move, the colossal fist under his control flew straight at Kyosuke. Kyosuke remained cool and defiant, standing while the fist sped right before him. A massive collision occurred, dirt and rocks scattered everywhere, dust and smoke swirling. Hideki looked up at the sky and laughed with satisfaction. This is the price a mediocre student like you pays for daring to oppose me. In the smoke after the attack, the factory's silhouette appeared half-collapsed. The ground cracked from the force, no figures remained. With such power, an ordinary student would be shattered or dying. Hideki smirked smugly, did I go a bit too far? I'll find another place to torture him. I still don't know who you are, but I'll stay to watch you die. The earlier explosion left dust everywhere. His face was speckled with mud. He reached into his chest pocket for a handkerchief to wipe his face. Holding the cloth, Hideki slowly walked toward the partially ruined factory to witness Kyosuke's death. He complained, what a nuisance. He looked ahead in surprise. As the smoke cleared, a figure remained standing in the same spot as if nothing had happened. What's going on? At the center of the wreckage, Hideki froze. What? Kyosuke walked slowly toward him. Although he had initially proposed a peaceful talk, the man had started hostilities rudely, so Kyosuke frowned and asked calmly, I said I only wanted to talk a little. He showed no injuries or scratches, not even a speck of dust, which stunned Hideki. What? You're unharmed even after being hit by my high-level magic. No student has ever been like that. He angrily pointed and demanded, who the hell are you? Tell me your name now. Kyosuke smiled when he heard the question, rubbing his chin provocatively. Who am I? You still don't know who I am. His face darkened, his eyes flashing with a counter-question. Of course he couldn't conceive reincarnation, so he replied, I don't know what bastard you are. Don't joke around, say your name now. Kyosuke rubbed the back of his neck and smirked, I'm truly heartbroken. Yauko, have you really forgotten me? Your current image is exactly like Kyo Akizo, Hideki's friend from the past, who once spoke to him in this very tone. Yauko, have you really forgotten me? Your current image is exactly like Kyo Akizo, Hideki's friend from the past, who once spoke to him in this very tone. He was utterly shocked, his legs weakened and he turned away, unwilling to accept the truth. It can't be. Hideki couldn't believe his eyes, he clutched his head, refusing to accept it. But his eyes lit up as he recalled something, and his face was no longer fearful. You bastard, stop that cheap act. You watched the news about the past, didn't you? He was furious, narrowing and widening his eyes contemptuously at Kyosuke. Gritting his teeth. That man, Misatokyo Akizo, raised his hand and unleashed a teal-green power. Hideki shouted angrily, he's dead already. A vortex formed, hurling countless chunks of earth and rock around. Kyosuke closed his eyes, sighed, looked at his former friend, stepped forward slowly and said, You're always like this, only believing what's convenient for you and ignoring what you dislike. Hideki could no longer keep calm. Terrified inside, he put on an aggressive, threatening front. Don't talk nonsense, take one more step and I'll hit you. Kyosuke sneered, so that's it, you've been swayed by the sweet words of those around you. As he spoke, he cast a spell, gathering energy into a small yellow orb growing in his palm while Heike remained oblivious, rattled by the words. Kyosuke demanded sharply, and that's why you betrayed me, Miss Tokyo Akizo, isn't it? His gaze was piercing, as if looking straight through Heike's heart. His greatest hatred did not come from outsiders, but from his closest friend. Hit in the heart, Heike screamed, then filled with rage, he launched a powerful attack at him. As Heike's attack rushed forward, Kyosuke cast magic. A yellow beam of light sliced through the teal-green strike. The attack was nullified, dissipating right before Heike's astonished eyes. He stared in surprise at the familiar technique and murmured, "This spell is exactly what Kyo Akizo used back then." In his memory, that friend once used a similar move to slay monsters. The redirected attack struck the nearby ground, causing a loud impact and billowing smoke. The two men looked at each other, at once strangers and old acquaintances. Trees around them shook violently from the explosion. Heike collapsed to his knees. It can't be. I'm sure we sealed him in prison. Seeing his old friend break down, Kyosuke explained, I was imprisoned and thrown into the depths of despair. Kyosuke bowed his head and looked at the miserable Heike. You brought tragedy into my life. His eyes shone with hatred from their past life. Heike hesitated. Are you really Misato? Kyoyahai. Kyosuke dropped to one knee and replied, it has been quite some time, hasn't it? He broke into a bright smile. Long time no see, I'm glad you still remember me, Yoako. Heike knelt on the ground, stared blankly upward and asked, Are you Misokyo Akizo? Suddenly, he sprang to his feet, flailed his arms and shouted, Don't take me for an idiot. That would mean he died and returned to this world. Clinging to his belief, Heike again activated his skill. He declared coldly and fiercely, If you're a ghost, then shut up and stay dead. This time not one but 5 strikes rushed toward Kyosuke at once. He gently pivoted his foot, easily dodging all of Heike's moves without needing to use his hands. With both hands neatly tucked into his pockets, Kyosuke looked up. And the earth-controlled fist he manipulated immediately slammed down from above onto the ground. He also dodged gracefully. Heike clicked his tongue in annoyance and cursed, You insolent brat. He silently calculated that he must seize the advantage. Even when he was Golden Sea, he didn't take part in battles, so to this day the 5 Saint Stars still mock him for that. Rage boiled inside Heike. He clenched his fists firmly and ground his teeth, but that didn't mean he was weak. Immediately, Heike spun lightly like a conductor, controlling the surrounding earth and stones like a storm, the power glowing a teal green. Heike proudly said, This is the technique I have diligently developed for 20 years, the Wind-Earth Dual Sorcery. Countless rocks big and small were swept up by the vortex, hurtling forward like hail. He opened his mouth and shouted, Take this. Rocks flew at extreme speed, gusts carrying earth and stone surged, leaving powerful teal-green streaks. The hailstorm slammed down directly where Kyosuke stood with tremendous force. With such a concentrated assault, the ground there exploded, stones scattering everywhere. Having combined powers, Heike dropped to his knees, panting but not forgetting to feel satisfied. How's that? How do you like it? This is my strongest spell. He carefully looked toward the explosion to see how his enemy fared. Dust filled the air, leaves swirling everywhere. Unlike the previous attack, this time Kyosuke did not cast a counter spell. He thought to himself he didn't retaliate. Heike's face showed joy. He smiled slightly, then tilted his head back and shouted to the sky in ecstasy, I did it, I really did it. Ambition made his face greedy and cruel. He yelled, I have defeated that bastard Misatokyo Akizo. Heike raised his fist, showing he had accomplished what he couldn't in the past. He taunted, You think I'm still the same after all these years? Fool, no matter how strong your time attribute is, it's all just the past. How many years do you think have passed? 20 years, those 20 years, you damn fool. The me you knew long ago is no longer who I am now. Having achieved Akizo's destruction, I can be proud for the rest of my life. Defeating you helped Heike regain confidence and prove his current strength. He was satisfied. Don't you dare underestimate me. The man grinned wickedly. 20 years have passed, my level has risen, so it's only natural that I'm stronger now. Heike exhaled in relief at having defeated his enemy, satisfied with the result. He narrowed his eyes, thinking of other foes. Now that he'd finally brought down Kyo Akizo, he wouldn't let them look down on him anymore. I'm the true strongest among the 5 Saint Stars. Heike seemed to become completely mad. A multitude of wicked thoughts crossed his evil face. A voice spoke, Finished, are you? Heike's face went dark, his pupils shrinking in terror. He panicked when he saw Kyosuke still perfectly intact. You just brushed the dust off your clothes calmly. He pointed at him and shouted, How is that possible? Took all those hits and still. Kyosuke smiled in admiration. You've learned some powerful spells too, huh? Truly befitting a hero of this era. A strange white aura had appeared around them without anyone noticing. Kyosuke said, Now I can get a little angry without holding back. With a bright grin that squinted his eyes, he clenched his fist, powerful energy flaring and shimmering with different hues. Heiki's face drained of color. Inwardly, he was in utter panic. This guy, he's a monster. He tried to calm himself but knew he couldn't retreat anymore. After all the effort he'd put in to reach this day, Heike refused to give up and continued casting earth magic. I won't let you toy with me anymore. A massive hand formed from earth magic lunged toward Kyosuke. Immediately enclosing him in its palm and squeezing tightly, Heike felt triumphant got him, yet Kyosuke disappointed him. He said softly, "Oh my, you still bark as loudly as ever, huh?" Kyosuke used water magic to stop that crushing hand. Because Heike's power was earth, when it met water it turned into sloppy mud, softening and collapsing, losing the hand's original shape. He taunted, "You think that's enough to defeat me?" The transformed mud then turned back toward Heike. The transformed mud flew back toward Heike. He panics, "No, don't come near me, get away." He used wind magic to try to push the mud away. But Kyosuke waved his hand and created a streak of light carrying wind power of his own. Unlike Heideke's teal-green wind power, his was a jade green. His wind magic formed a large vortex, sucking all of Heike's wind spells into it. The vortex's range widened, its tremendous force shrouding the area in dust and smoke. Heidke had to shield himself from the powerful vortex as it drew ever closer to him. Heidke was struck by his own counterattack, tumbling backward and hitting his head against a nearby tree. He cried out in pain. Not finished, Kyosuke cast fire magic and stood before him. Heike crawled back in fear, realizing he couldn't defeat him. Heike knelt and begged, "I'm sorry, Kyoizo, I beg you please spare me." In his pitiable state his clothes and face were smeared with mud. Heike banged his head on the ground. "I'm sorry for what happened 20 years ago, so please." Faced with his desperate plea, Kyosuke fell silent. He pressed his lips together. While Heike bowed his head to the ground, he smiled slyly. "Kyoizo is a kind fool. If I do this, he'll surely spare me." Truly, lands may change, but nature does not. He remained the same, only caring about his own benefit. Contrary to his expectations, Kyosuke coldly replied, "Shut up." He suddenly looked up and said, "Huh, you mean this is how you tricked me back then? You think I'll let that happen again?" A terrifying aura radiated from Kyosuke. His face darkened with the old grudge, and forgiving him easily would not be worthy of what he had suffered. Hearing that, Heike was terrified and hurriedly stood up. "Wait, Kyoizo, we were friends, weren't we?" His fury peaked, murderous intent flashing in his eyes. Kyosuke growled, "You have no right to say those words, especially after turning me into a vengeful demon." He gathered energy into a fist and struck Heike's hateful face without mercy. Not just one blow, he punched repeatedly across his body, returning the vendetta from their past life that Heike had caused. Pummeled so much, Heike couldn't resist, spitting fresh blood, silently regretting. The image of Kyosuke before him was like a demon come to punish the crimes he had committed. Heike vowed inwardly not to mess with this man again. Finally came a palm strike of great force. A blast of power that sent him flying miles like a rocket, cutting through even large tree trunks. Heike slammed his head hard into a tree trunk. Kyosuke stood before him and said, "You should thank me for not killing you. I still have one question for you." By now Heike was an empty shell, completely unconscious, his body scorched by both ice and fire magic, bruised all over, foam at his mouth. Seeing him like that, Kyosuke said, "But you can't hear me anymore, can you?" The sunset light cast over half of Kyosuke's face as he coldly stared at the traitorous enemy, feeling as if some long-standing grievance had been partially settled. Heike slowly opened his eyes, pain spreading throughout his body. Kyosuke looked down from above, his tone icy, "Hey, you're finally awake." He panicked so badly he backed away 100 meters. His face pale, voice trembling, "Please don't kill me." Kyosuke smiled faintly with a hint of contempt, "Oh dear, I won't kill you." He lifted his head composed, yet his bearing made Heike fear. But his pupils shone golden. In a low, threatening voice he said, "Will you answer my question?" His hand casually reached into his chest as if searching for something. "All right." First he pulled out a phone whose screen glowed with a name. "Tell me about this woman." Heike's eyes widened momentarily as if recognizing the person. He sprang up in panic, "My phone." However, Kyosuke only coldly looked at the first name on it. "In your call history, this person called you today." The gentle expression on Kyosuke's face suddenly turned angry. "What did the two of you talk about after all?" A bead of sweat rolled down his cheek as his voice faltered slightly. "That, because Lai will arrive in Japan in 3 days, I thought you wanted to talk about that." But a knowing smile appeared on Kyosuke's lips as if something had dawned on him. "I understand." Memories of the past betrayal resurfaced. "In 3 days, Lai will." His hand relaxed, a hint of confidence appearing on his handsome face. "I've decided what to do." Heike quickly caught the phone the moment he threw it. "Return to you, for now, treat Lai as you normally would." Suddenly he put a finger to his lips to signal secrecy. "However, don't tell her anything about my identity." He pointed directly at him and declared forcefully, "Because when you were unconscious, I planted a charm in your heart. A flame slowly appeared in his palm. If you tell her who I am." As he closed his hand, the flame quickly erupted into a terrible explosion. This made his face even more green and purple, lifeless. Boom, remember to keep your word. He gently turned and walked away, leaving him behind. He secretly rejoiced inside at having tricked Heidke. I didn't actually use that magic. Now he clutched his head in panic, lips pressed tight, but with Yoako's personality, a scare like that was enough. In the end, he knelt on the ground with no will left. I won't put you under absolute hypnosis, Yoako, because I want you to be desperate while fully conscious. A sly, wicked smile quietly appeared on Kyosuke's face. The flight attendants were carefully pushing service carts down the passenger cabin. 3 days later, Josie gazed pensively at the hazy scene outside the airplane window. The bodyguard walking beside her quietly reminded, Ms. Lai, we're almost there. The flight attendant's announcement slowly sounded, ladies and gentlemen, the plane will be landing at. Suddenly a cry rang out, drawing her attention. A group of hijackers appeared from nowhere and seized an attendant. This plane is under our control now. One of them aimed a gun at the passengers and ordered, everyone get down now. Then Josie suddenly stood up, seemingly unfazed by the chaos, and calmly stepped toward the hijacker who was shouting. If you don't follow my orders, suddenly she appeared right beside him in an instant. With a decisive move, she knocked the hijacker down. He stared wide-eyed, unable to believe what was happening. In moments, she had completely neutralized the rest. Passengers in the cabin were astonished by her appearance. They cheered at her alluring and powerful demeanor. 5 Saint Human Lie, we're saved. In the end, the hijackers were captured as soon as the plane landed. The welcoming man bowed slightly with sincere thanks. Ms. Lai, I don't know how to thank you enough. Her youthful face showed a kind, unassuming smile. Luckily I was on this flight, it saved the airline's reputation. Then she turned to look at the gun in her bodyguard's hand. More importantly, that gun seemed to be a special type undetectable by scanners. Rosie's tone dropped a few degrees, almost conducting a private negotiation. Lately many groups have been using devices made from materials from the dungeon. Therefore, she placed a sympathetic, understanding hand on the man's shoulder. We need to equip our staff with some self-defense devices. A dangerous smile curled at her lips, her tone thoroughly threatening, like the very weapon he carried. He fearfully lowered his head and quickly replied, not daring to utter a sound, of course I'll take care of it right away. In the airport, dozens of people were moving about, searching for their flights. She stood off to the side, pressing the phone to her ear and whispering, I was the one who released the hijackers. Her bodyguard glanced at his mistress and smiled. It went smoothly, didn't it? She completely agreed, unable to hide her pleasure. This was quite entertaining, wasn't it? Recalling the chaos on the plane earlier, her voice grew louder. Planting the hijackers had ultimately been the decisive move that made the deal succeed. The timid, deferential posture of the man earlier amused her. And the cheers from the people outside the queue made her even happier. Look, it seems this also helped polish her public image. The crowd kept getting excited, loudly chanting her name. She really is a revered hero. A practiced smile appeared on her lips as she waved warmly. Several cars stopped in front of a solemn-looking school. She stepped out of the car, moving forward with composed poise. Now it's time to handle the matter that brought me to Japan. On the wooden door was a sign reading, Principal's Office. Heidke was staring blankly outside, his face covered in wounds. A soft sound echoed, now enough to catch his attention. Rosie entered from outside with a cheerful manner, pardon the intrusion. Yoako sat down leisurely and spoke calmly with him. He asked whether the investigation into a student with the void attribute had progressed. His eyes shifted slightly, uneasy, choosing his words carefully. No, it turned out to be a false alarm. As you said, that student is just a useless loser. She took a gentle sip of tea and continued leisurely. Is that so? A rare attribute, so what? In the end, it's nothing special. However, for Heidke it was like ants on a hot pan. If he said anything wrong, the magic would trigger immediately. I just need to answer normally. She placed the teacup on the table and her tone turned serious. Then let me get straight to the main matter. Darkness quickly masked most of the malicious expression on her face. Regarding the new drug we're developing, we should choose the next guinea pig, shouldn't we? She crossed her long legs lightly and commented, You've been making good use of this academy system. Meanwhile, Kyosuke's earpiece was transmitting sound from the principal's office. Starting from the student list, he stood on the rooftop and muttered a curse under his breath. How despicable. His face was cold to the extreme as he declared in a deep voice, The next one to taste despair will be you, Losi. The television in Kyosuke's room was currently blaring rigidly. And next is today's news. Yesterday, the 5-star Saint of Thunder landed in Japan. He listened silently to every word, his expression indifferent and unreadable. She received much praise for subduing the hijackers. Seeing Josie's smiling image on the news, he thought to himself, Losi, one of those who betrayed me 20 years ago. She casually glanced at the exquisite hourglass on her wrist. She manufactured special weapons from materials taken from the dungeon and seemed to have amassed a fortune from that trade. But he recalled what he'd just overheard. Judging from his earlier conversation with Yoa Ko, it seemed she was using this school to carry out shady activities. He stood up and put on his coat. Outwardly a hero, yet behind the scenes exploiting others for profit. A contemptuous smile appeared on his thin lips. I can't let this go. Then he stepped out the door and headed straight toward his target. The scene shifted to the school's corridor, bustling with laughter. He held his phone, pondering countermeasures, but how should I act? On the phone screen was the latest news about Josie. From the moment she set foot in this academy, security had been strict. At last, he had decided on his own course of action. Just then someone called from behind. Koski, recognizing the caller, he replied softly, "Oh, it's you." Asayan cheerfully answered in a soft voice, "Good morning." She stepped closer and peeked at his phone. "Are you reading about Mr. Lai Ha?" He glanced over coldly and said, "Yeah, I'm just skimming." Assa's small face showed undisguised admiration. "Mr. Lai is amazing, isn't he? He defeated those hijackers yesterday." She paused, then continued, "And the great serpent Truong Sun is also very famous." His eyes brightened at the new information. Truong Sun, she explained innocently as they walked. "It's the clan Mr. Lai founded. Many of its members are very powerful." He briefly remembered those who looked like bodyguards. "I see those people in black protecting Lai are from that clan." Asa excitedly continued, nonstop in her praise. "Many students here intend to join the military. What about you, Kyosuke?" He gave a slight smile, wanting to refuse outright, but suddenly paused as if remembering something. His slender hand lightly stroked his chin as Kyosuke carefully calculated, "If I leverage that clan, I can get close to Lai." At last his steps moved forward with determination. He waved goodbye and didn't forget to say a few words. "Thanks, Asa. Because of you I know what I should do." She stood still at the classroom door, watching his hurried back. A big question mark appeared over her head. "It's nothing." Inside the ornate wooden cabinet were a series of prestigious awards. Heike sat at his desk, startled by the phone's ring. He carefully lifted the receiver and whispered gently, "It's me." He tilted his head to the deep blue sky and said softly, "Hey Yoako, I need to ask you a favor." On the other end came his hesitant, timid reply, "Yes, what's the matter?" He merely smiled faintly and requested in a low voice, "If Lai contacts you." The scene shifted to a laboratory where a man was tied up, kneeling on the floor, surrounded by several researchers. The door was suddenly pushed open, light illuminating a familiar figure. Rosie stood with her hands on her hips, confident, and asked, "What do you think?" The man panicked, his face ashen as he pleaded, "Please don't inject me with that drug anymore. If this keeps up, I'll die." The high-heeled shoe brought forward in front of him made him even more terrified. She decisively kicked him to the floor, showing no mercy. Despite his trembling, she coldly decided, "No way, I won't take advice from a lab rat." Her crimson lips curved into a witty, delighted smile. "Don't be so pessimistic." Her heel pressed carefully against the man's cheek, causing his pupils to contract. "If your body is compatible with this drug, you'll become even stronger." She turned and walked away, flicking her fingers lightly as a signal. "So let's begin." Seeing the syringe filled with red fluid, the man screamed louder, "Please, wait, I can still." But the medics were quick and injected the fluid into his neck. His whole body went rigid, and his scream cut off mid-word. Immediately after, the man thrashed briefly and then collapsed completely. His face went blank, his speech reduced to meaningless groans. After observing, she couldn't help but sigh. This time he lost his language ability. It seems the drug won't take effect unless there's some magical skill present. The door opened once more with a soft sound. "We still need more data." The bodyguard followed and reported cautiously, "In the next phase, we'll soon need more test subjects." She crossed her arms in agreement, indeed. A malicious smile appeared on Rosie's lips as her hand tapped wildly as usual. "I'll disguise it as recruitment for the great serpent Truong Sun." She leisurely stepped into the elevator while contacting Heidke. "Hello Yoako, about the test subjects we discussed earlier. I need people skilled in magic. Can you select some students from your academy?" On the other end he was silent, not answering immediately. After a moment he finally suggested, "If so, how about doing it this way?" She stood in the elevator, silently listening to every word he said. "We could hold a selection trial right at the academy, which would make it easy to filter out the capable ones, right?" The corner of her mouth lifted slightly, her face betraying a sly intent. "Sometimes he does come up with good ideas." The elevator announced the ground floor again. She stepped out calmly, her heart full of joy. "The date, time, and specifics will be announced later." On the other end, Heidke quickly hung up. He put his hands behind his back and silently gazed at the sky outside the window. "I've done as you requested." The scene shifted to a large auditorium crowded with people. "I want to announce something." The bodyguard on the podium announced solemnly, "The great serpent Truong Sun has decided to hold a selection examination to recruit new recruits." This caused the students below to buzz with excitement. Really, this is our chance to join that famous clan. Kyosuke, standing among the ranks, couldn't help but smile faintly. His gaze fixed straight on the man standing on the podium. Thus, the path to approach Lai had opened. On a morning in the sports field, students and judges had all gathered. A judge spoke, "We thank you for attending the Great Serpent Truong Sun selection exam." The male judge with long hair began to explain the rules. "I will explain how this assessment will proceed." While that judge explained the assessment method, Kyosuke silently ran calculations through his mind. To join the Great Serpent Truong Sun and get close to Lai, I must pass this assessment. During my previous approach to Yoako, I tried not to draw attention, but this time it's the opposite. To attract the attention of Jiang Xindu, Lai's right-hand man, and the judges. I'll display my strength. Standing lost in thought in the hallway, a voice suddenly called out, "Kyosuke." It turned out to be Kin approaching to greet him. "Are you going to take the assessment?" Kyosuke nodded slightly. "Yeah, you too." His gaze wavered a bit. He didn't want her involved in this. But Kin smiled awkwardly, cutting off his thoughts. "I know I don't really belong here, but I have my reasons for participating." With a look full of determination, she looked at Kyosuke. "Do your best so we can both pass the assessment." Kyosuke also vowed to himself that he would pass at all costs. At the stadium now, the judge announced, "We will begin the test to measure your mana." He then pointed to a golden orb. "This measuring device will display the mana of anyone who touches it. We will measure mana here. Please come up one by one." Touch the mana measuring device. The first young man stepped forward. After he left came a sigh in the judge's score. Next, a sigh Kyosuke. Kyosuke stepped up. Smiling kindly, he showed his student ID before moving on. Seeing the information on the card, the judge had no expectations. Void attribute level 30, seems there's no hope. Kyosuke placed his hand on the mana measuring device. A blinding light erupted, shaking the entire hall. The judge was dazzled by the light, still not understanding what had happened. The students around were stunned too. "What the hell is that? That's crazy." Kyosuke remained standing there by the mana device to everyone's surprise. He turned his head confidently and asked, "So it's done right?" The judge, still unable to process the event, replied vaguely, "Huh. Kyosuke turned and walked away as the panel began recording his grade. Among those who had their mana measured, only Kyosuke achieved rank S. The next part of the assessment is the magic skills test. Kyosuke was forming a sphere out of earth and stone. The judge behind commented, "He only made a lump of earth. Having lots of mana isn't enough." Suddenly, the corner of Kyosuke's mouth curled into a knowing smile. In his hand now was a water attribute sphere. Witnessing this, the judge grew astonished. Kyosuke can create two spheres of different attributes at the same time. His smile hadn't faded as a fire attribute sphere formed next. Not stopping there, he proceeded to create two more spheres of other attributes. Everyone around was amazed by his power. A man exclaimed, creating all the basic attributes at once. Kyosuke grinned smugly. "How about that? A void attribute bearer, always considered useless, can do this and surprise you all right." Tu Sakazin ran up quickly to praise him. "You're amazing, Kyosuke." He encouraged her in return. "Thanks, you do your best too." It was Kin's turn. She was preparing to take her test, focusing her mana to demonstrate her ability. The withered plants on the shelf began to revive thanks to her magic. Their stems straightened and started to bloom. Finally, Kin transformed the drooping shoots into large, flourishing flowers. Two male classmates sneered at her ability. "She only knows how to revive wilted flowers, nothing special." Only Kyosuke noticed the special aspect of Kin's magic. It was light attribute, a rare element. But the judges would probably have difficulty recognizing that. "I feel sorry for her," he thought. "Better she doesn't get dragged into this." Teased, Kin blushed and lowered her head as she left. The long-haired male judge had taken note of her and jotted something into his phone. A Saiyajin worth bringing in as an experimental subject. The judge announced the next round. "Finally, we will proceed with one-on-one duels." The long-haired judge pointed to the people behind him. "Your opponents will be them." The students were stunned. "You want us to face members of the Great Serpent Truong Sun?" The judge reassured them, "Don't worry, we won't judge solely on winning or losing. What's important is how you fight." Outwardly he said that, but inwardly the judge looked down on them. From the start, what chance does a student have to beat someone from the Great Serpent Truong Sun? The arrogant blonde challenged Kyosuke. "You're the student who caused a commotion in the assessment." He began to flex and taunt. "Seems you've shown off quite a bit and scored well in other tests, but I'll show you all that means nothing in real combat." Under pressure from the muscular man, Kyosuke only gave a polite smile. "Yes, I hope to learn much from you." The blonde confidently declared, "I'll defeat you in one strike." He used an earth attribute skill and began to form earth spheres. Then dozens of similar spheres hurtled straight toward Kyosuke. Unfazed, Kyosuke calmly used his magic to block the attack. The earth spheres were reflected back toward the attacker by his spell. The blonde was struck by his own magic rebounding back at him. He gritted his teeth. What? He destroyed my spell in a single move. Gathering himself and looking forward, Kyosuke was no longer there. The blonde gaped. Where did he go? Suddenly, Kyosuke appeared behind him with an ice knife pressed to his throat. He smiled triumphantly and whispered in the blonde's ear, "You call casting a spell to create an opening real combat. I've learned a lot." The result of the match was announced. You win, Asaka Kyosuke. The long-haired judge in the crowd was astonished. He defeated a member of the Great Serpent Truong's son. Who exactly is this student? Night fell. Duzin sat in a room listening to the judge's report. The assessment has concluded. She inquired about the situation. Did you find any interesting subjects? Duzin showed interest in this one, a noteworthy student. The judge continued his report. Yes, he passed the assessment with overwhelming strength. However, it seems he has the void attribute. Rosin pondered void attribute. Could that be the student Yoko is investigating? At that thought, she sat up and laughed out loud. Ha ha. Dozin's eyes brimmed with interest. It seems I may have a very interesting test subject on my hands. In the auditorium, the long-haired judge announced, I will now declare those who passed the assessment. First was that stern-faced individual staring straight ahead. A decisive voice immediately rang out across the room, Asai Kyosuke. The students nearby began to chatter. Of course he passed. He absolutely destroyed the tests. Kyosuke smiled in satisfaction. Everything was going according to plan. Now I can approach Lei. The judge continued reading the next names. Asayin answered happily, present. Kyosuke glanced over in mild surprise. Asa was selected too. He began to think, I don't believe having a special attribute alone is enough to pass. It seems Lei is using the academy's students to scheme something. There must be some reason behind Asa being chosen. Kin was overjoyed at the result and smiled happily. He looked at Kin and told himself, it's fine, I won't let them lay a hand on Asa. I just need to achieve my goal and protect her. On a new day at the Great Serpent Truong's son, a few days after the assessment. In front of them stood the HL Company building, Japan branch. Inside the office, the long-haired male judge welcomed the students, welcome those who have passed the assessment. He began to explain the schedule. Today we will conduct suitability checks before officially accepting you into the Great Serpent Truong's son. Also, Losi will be arriving. Hearing that, Kyosuke's expression shifted, becoming extremely intimidating. He will meet you after the checks conclude. Please follow me. Kyosuke and Kin joined the group. While Kin curiously looked around, Kyosuke only thought about meeting Lei immediately, but he couldn't abandon Asa. Kin was excited to enter such a large building. It really made her nervous in a good way. Kyosuke replied yes. Kin turned to him, smiling happily. I'm really glad to be able to join the Great Serpent Truong's son. Kyosuke had a question. By the way, why do you want to join the Great Serpent Truong's son? Kin scratched her head awkwardly. My mother is in the hospital and the treatment costs are quite expensive. Kyosuke nodded. I understand. He had determined that she was joining for her mother, not for him. Now he had to try even harder to protect her. The long-haired judge stopped in front of a basement level. We have arrived. Kyosuke asked, a basement. Then everyone descended into the basement and stopped at the hall. Kyosuke assessed the surroundings, thinking, a round of equipment tests, surely they. At that moment, the long-haired judge ordered the doors closed. The doors slammed shut, leaving everyone bewildered. Kyosuke observed, no intention of letting anyone leave, they're taking this seriously. Seeing that, two young men stepped forward to demand, hey, what do you think you're doing? The long-haired judge finally revealed his terrifying face and barked, silence. The two young men were so frightened by his words that they trembled. The long-haired man explained, as I said before, we will now begin suitability testing. Specifically, we will test compatibility with a new pharmaceutical product currently being developed in secret. This drug is formulated from materials collected in dungeons and can greatly enhance the user's physical strength and mana. The red-haired youth stammered, what? The blue-haired one smiled, then this is good news. Kyosuke asked curiously, does this new drug have any side effects? The long-haired man pointed to the screen, it's faster to show you. A male student was tied up for injection, pleading, please stop, I still. The other students who witnessed it were shocked and terrified. The student quickly fainted, saliva unconsciously spilling from his mouth. The student quickly passed out, drooling. The blue-haired youth shouted, what the hell is this? The judge calmly replied, what you just saw was someone incompatible with the new drug. Is that enough to answer your question? The two men protested vehemently, don't be ridiculous, we'd never accept that drug. Having said that, they cast magic, preparing to attack the judge. The two rushed to attack the long-haired judge, threatening, get us out of here now. Meanwhile, Kyosuke calmly instructed Kin, Asa, don't leave my side. The long-haired man clenched his fist, gently knocking out the two troublemakers. The two immediately fell unconscious from the judge's strike. Then he looked at the two and said, oh no, the number of specimens has decreased. His gaze shifted to others. The long-haired man pointed at Kin and ordered, we'll start with that girl over there first. He prepared the drug in a syringe. That girl must be the student with the light attribute. I'm very eager to see the results of this experiment. Then he stepped toward Kin, frightening her. Immediately, Kyosuke stepped forward to shield Kin, his face stern as he protected her from the villain. The long-haired man demanded, what are you doing? Kyosuke answered, stopping a coward like you from approaching her. His words enraged the long-haired man, who clenched his teeth. He ordered the large henchman in front, hey, hold him down. The man threw a punch at Kyosuke, but with his speed, Kyosuke easily dodged. Kyosuke's speed surprised him, and with a single move, he quickly took down that large henchman. Those around were also shocked. What? The first one was already defeated. Kyosuke moved like a blade again. The next two were quickly taken down by him. The large henchmen were struck by Kyosuke and knelt on the ground in pain. The long-haired man couldn't believe his eyes. No way, he defeated so many people with a single strike. Having dealt with the troublemakers, Kyosuke turned around. His cold gaze fixed on the long-haired man, warning, you're next. He froze under Kyosuke's oppressive aura. Faced with the disadvantage, the long-haired man decided to take a reckless risk. He suddenly lunged forward to grab Kin, causing her to scream in fright. Kyosuke grabbed the hand that was trying to seize Kin. I told you I won't let you get near her. He withdrew his hand in anger, damn it. Who the hell is he? A normal student couldn't possibly. Kyosuke's expression turned extremely terrifying. Now prepare yourself. At that moment, Kyosuke stood like a hero shielding Kin. The long-haired man snarled through clenched teeth, damn you. Kyosuke instructed Asa, stand behind me. Though frightened, Kin trembled as she replied, thank you, Kyosuke. Watching the boy protect her, Kin thought, Kyosuke is amazing, I couldn't keep up with his movements earlier. I knew he had grown stronger, but I didn't expect him to be this powerful. The long-haired man regained his composure and warned, you bastard, don't get cocky. Kyosuke showed no fear and responded, let me ask you one thing, why are the academy students being used as test subjects? His sharp gaze stared intently at his opponent as Kyosuke's question landed. The long-haired man curled a sinister smile and arrogantly replied, it's simple, those who believe in Lord Lei can receive his blessings. Once we successfully develop this drug, he'll become even stronger than before. Kyosuke frowned, you think conducting such inhumane experiments is acceptable just for that goal? The long-haired man confidently uttered in human words, we only make use of what's available, that's all. Then he let out a strange laugh, being used as our test subjects is actually an honor for them. Kyosuke recalled Kin's words earlier in the company hall. My mother is in the hospital and the medical bills are quite expensive. Being accepted into the great serpent Truong Sun made me really happy. Thinking of that made him clench his fist even tighter. The long-haired man casually pointed at Kin, that girl too she was ecstatic to become. Kyosuke's voice brimmed with extreme hatred, shut up, a great power now enveloped his entire body. Magic radiated from Kyosuke's body, causing the long-haired man to falter. Kyosuke, seething, ground out each word. Who do you think you are? A piece of trash who tramples others like you could never understand Asai's feelings. Kin looked at the boy before her, moved to tears. Kyosuke, the long-haired man, wondered suspiciously, what is this overwhelming pressure? Is he really just a student? Despite his confusion, a confident smile still tugged at his mouth. The long-haired man, full of arrogance, addressed Kyosuke. Usually I'd tell you to know your place, but I don't hate your boldness at all. So why don't you submit to Lord Lei? If you hand that girl over, you might even be appointed to a high-ranking post. I'm sure Lord Lei would be very pleased. His words made Kyosuke even angrier. I told you to shut up, I won't forgive scum like you. The long-haired man loosened his collar, threatening, you'll regret this. Then he began to display his power. The long-haired man's eyes flared a fierce golden color, his strength cracking the ground beneath his feet. Kyosuke realized body enhancement magic. The long-haired man confirmed. Yes, combined with my martial arts, this is an unbeatable skill. The long-haired man's feet left the ground and lunged forward, delivering a punch toward Kyosuke. The fist came down with great force, but missed. Much to his surprise, the long-haired man, his face full of confidence, continued, looks like you dodged that one, huh? Kyosuke observed, I see, so that's body enhancement magic, it's truly powerful. With that, the long-haired man rushed in again. I challenge you to dodge this one. Kyosuke closed his eyes, cast magic, focused, and turned imagination into form. The long-haired man sneered when he saw him standing still. What the hell are you doing, giving up? His fist closed in, die. Kyosuke snapped his eyes open as void magic activated. He intercepted the long-haired man's punch and triggered his mana. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Impossible, does he have power equal to mine or even greater? Kyosuke looked at the long-haired man and smiled challengingly. It seems I can use body enhancement magic as well. Seizing the moment, Kyosuke landed a powerful blow on the long-haired man. The strike grievously wounded him, sending his body flying and shattering the ground. Knocked to the ground, he refused to accept the defeat. Impossible. A fleeting thought crossed his mind, who exactly is he? Kyosuke stood silently, staring at the long-haired man with hatred and contempt. With things settled, Kin was deeply grateful. Thank you, Kyosuke. The male lead gently asked her, are you okay? Glancing at the others, Kyosuke offered, I'll clear the way, so you should leave. The two young men hesitated, but what about you? Kyosuke didn't answer. He used his strength to smash a large glass frame. To the astonishment of his three friends, Kyosuke strode out proudly, leaving only these words, I have business to attend to. Over at Yoshi's, a phone rang, a hurried voice spoke. Lord Lei, there's an emergency. It seems Lord Jiang has been defeated and the students have escaped. Josie shocked. What? The caller continued to report, there's an extremely powerful man heading straight this way, and as soon as he finished, a loud noise erupted. Yoshi momentarily stunned. What the hell happened? It was Kyosuke standing at the door. Josie on guard asked, who are you? Why have you come here? Kyosuke's expression turned terrifying. His voice was calm but full of menace. It's simple, I've come to settle a score with you from 20 years ago. Josie couldn't fully understand what Kyosuke was saying. A debt from 20 years ago. What are you talking about? Josie couldn't fully understand what Kyosuke was saying. A debt from 20 years ago. What are you talking about? Kyosuke gently stepped closer. It seems you still don't understand. Do I need to explain it to you more clearly? Since the SSS class dungeon 20 years ago, you pentagram saints have been hailed as heroes. Hearing the mention of the past, Josie's expression tightened. Kyosuke continued, suppose the conspiracy of someone was crushed that day. Josie looked composed, turning away. What nonsense is a student like you talking about? Are you going to lecture me on history? But Kyosuke went on, now the pentagram saints are leaders in every major field worldwide. They are praised as heroes who defeated evil. Rosie cut in, so in the end you Kyosuke interrupted, even so. The truth is completely otherwise. Yoshi frowned, voice laced with irritation. What are you saying? Kyosuke explained further, his demeanor suddenly changing. You used your own teammates as sacrifices to reap the rewards and build your reputation. Even now, you trample on the wills of those who once fought by your side. Am I wrong? Hearing the accusation, Josie laughed, showing contempt. I was wondering what nonsense you were spouting. Don't tell me you actually believe those ridiculous conspiracy theories. Faced with that attitude, Kyosuke remained adamant. That's not just a conspiracy theory, I know what you did. You pushed your teammates through that gate. Kyosuke's indictment turned Josie's face pale with guilt. She frowned in doubt. Why? How could an ordinary student know that? Sensing the conflict in Yoshi's thoughts, Kyosuke spoke. You still don't get it. Who do you think I really am? Changing his expression, Kyosuke emphasized, I am Masato Kyoikizo. Hearing that name, Josie became alarmed. No, it can't be, Kyosuke cut in firmly, it already happened. I used the very power you once called me a monster. A level 100 who can wield time magic is indeed a monster. Every word from Kyosuke made Josie more terrified. She was shaken by the truth, unable to believe it. Impossible. Kyoizo, are you really here? Kyosuke affirmed, I also know the things your company has been secretly doing. If I expose that, your reputation will be ruined. Rosie snapped angrily, waving her hand and shouting, don't toy with me. Kyosuke continued to step closer. Don't say I'm toying with you, that phrase should be for me to say. Because of what happened 20 years ago, and because you trampled on the hopes of a girl who gave her all. I will never forgive you for that. Faced with the opponent's threat, Rosie suddenly smiled. Arrogantly lifting her head, don't underestimate me, you're no longer in Masao's body. Rosie clenched a baton in her hand. Now that you dare appear before me, I'll make you regret it. She used her magic to strike at Kyosuke. The force so intense it sent cracks spreading across the entire room. Kyosuke used his speed to dodge one of Yoshi's blows. Holding the staff, Rosie smugly announced, see, this is the power of the weapon our company developed. It was forged from materials from the dungeon, substances harder than any metal. I'll show you how sharp it is. Saying that, she leaped into the air and aimed her strike at Kyosuke. Facing Yoshi's relentless attacks, Kyosuke avoided them all but couldn't land a hit. Seeing this, Rosie sneered, dodging seems to be the only thing you can do. Suddenly, she realized something was wrong. Why aren't the strikes hitting? Kyosuke spoke indifferently, so that's it. While dodging Josie's attack, he remarked, you've been playing the corporate queen for so long that your techniques have become sloppy. You're not much better than Yoko now. Kyosuke's words angered Josie, veins bulging on her face. She shouted and charged at Kyosuke, enough nonsense. At that moment Josie's weapon passed through Kyosuke and she was pleased. Hit, I got him. Before she could relish it, Kyosuke's voice sounded, what a pity. He had appeared behind her, leaving her stunned. Immediately, Josie froze in place. Why you? Then Josie clenched her teeth, realizing is that void magic. I've never heard it works like this. If that's the case, she readied her weapon for the next strike. This time imbuing her weapon with fire element magic. Her eyes blazed with anger. I'll finish him with this blow. I'll shut that big mouth of yours. Gathering all her power, the magical flames, as if to consume everything, surged forward. Josie began to rush madly forward with a towering blaze. The spear and fire magic thrusting straight at Kyosuke. But with little effort, Kyosuke caught the spear's tip between two fingers. Josie exclaimed in shock, impossible. So that's all the power you have? Kyosuke glared mockingly, you're actually worse than you were 20 years ago. Realizing the situation was grim, Josie decided, then I have no choice but to use that. She braced herself, preparing to cast another spell. Kyosuke didn't have time to steady himself, his eyes flashing with astonishment. At that moment, Josie took a red syringe. The needle pointed straight at her own body. Immediately, a purple stream of magic enveloped her body. Kyosuke's face instantly tensed, he frowned. Josie's whole body began to transform. Are you really going that far? Her gaze filled with murderous intent, each word uttered terrifyingly, monster. Not long after, the purple energy layer faded, revealing Josie's body completely transformed into a half-monster state. After finishing her transformation, she sneered softly, "Ha, now you can't defeat me." Facing that remark, Kyosuke remained calm and replied, on the contrary, you want to beat me with enhancement drugs. Do you think it's that simple? To that question, Josie kept her contemptuous attitude. Don't underestimate me. Do you know how much time and money I poured into this drug? I collected materials found only deep within dungeons and spent years researching to create it. Since witnessing that extraordinary power 20 years ago, I've always sought to reach that threshold. Now I have found a power that surpasses all. I should be thanking you. Turning his gaze to Kyosuke, it seemed he could no longer stand listening to Josie's rambling. He interrupted, pathetic. You rely on drugs and still dare to boast. Kyosuke asked coldly, causing Josie to freeze and ask back, what did you just say? Before she could finish, Kyosuke moved into an attack stance. Sorry to cut your monologue short, but it's time to end it. With that, Kyosuke's hands were engulfed in blazing golden flames. Opposite him, Josie also took a fighting stance, ready to finish her opponent. Fine, settle this once and for all, let's see who is stronger. No sooner had she finished speaking than her body shot forward, like the wind, closing in directly on Kyosuke. However, faced with this attack, he merely tilted his body slightly and dodged, unfortunately for the wall behind. It took the direct blow from Josie and shattered, sending debris flying everywhere. After executing her move, Josie turned back to taunt, see, this is the result of my research, I'll send you to the afterlife once more. Saying that, she lunged again with terrifying speed, catching Kyosuke off guard. Before he could defend, Josie's gigantic hand struck his chest with such force that the protagonist was launched backward like a cannonball. Seeing she'd landed a hit, Josie smugly thought, I've won. Unfortunately, before she could celebrate, Josie felt a pain in her left foot. And looking down, she discovered her foot had been pierced by a sharp shard of ice. The pain made her buckle. Meanwhile, Kyosuke remained calm, hands in his pockets as he approached. I planted that the moment you attacked. Kyosuke's meticulous preparations sent Josie into a panic, sweat pouring as she stammered. How could you? Kyosuke explained casually. Thanks to your lackeys using it earlier, I observed how you employ body-enhancing magic. Your magic is impressive, but in the end it only produces a bit of berserk wind. Kyosuke's contemptuous tone made Josie bite her lip and retort, how dare you mock my research achievements? Before she could finish, Kyosuke shouted, don't make excuses. You trample on others and dare to call that progress. You truly disgust me. The more he spoke, the angrier Kyosuke became, his gaze filled with murderous intent. This caused the alarm bell inside Josie to ring incessantly. With no other option, Josie concentrated all her strength into her hand. Ignoring the wound on her left foot, she lunged to attack Kyosuke, attacking as she screamed. Unfortunately, faced with such a simple attack, Kyo just lightly reached out and seized her wrist. Then his other arm delivered a single precise punch straight into Josie's abdomen, causing her such pain that she vomited blood. At that moment, Josie felt nothing but surprise and resentment. My power had no effect, so this is Kyo Akizo's strength now. Before she could react further, Josie was completely defeated. On the other side, after vanquishing his old enemy, Kyo coldly left the place. As he walked away, he said, Lei, that was never real power to begin with. Just as he left the building, a familiar voice sounded behind Kaio. He turned and found it was his friend Asa. Asa, are you okay? Kaio smiled and replied, glad you're all right too. At the same time, not far away, reporters began to notice the building explosion, murmuring, hey, just like the tip said, Lucy's company was attacked. That made Asa suspicious. She turned to Kaio and asked, did you do it? Of course, Kaio feigned innocence, who knows? He shrugged and fell into deep thought. Now Lucy's crimes have been exposed, the test subjects are safe, and Lucy has lost everything. Back to Asa's viewpoint, noticing Kaio's pensive expression, she anxiously said, hey, Kaio. I still don't fully understand what's going on, but if you hadn't been there, I probably wouldn't be standing here right now. I'm really grateful to you. Asa's words surprised Kaio slightly. But he then gave a faint smile, reminding himself, right, I almost forgot. Helping others used to be my reason for living. Time passed quickly, and that evening, news that Lucy's company had been attacked spread everywhere. A female anchor's voice came from the TV. We have just received reports that illegal human experiments were conducted in a secret underground lab owned by Lucy, one of the 5 sacred stars. The incident was uncovered after the site was raided by an unknown assailant. This genius shows signs of memory loss, and the identity of the attacker remains a mystery. Back to Kaio, hearing the anchor, he wondered how the others would react. Suddenly, the anchor's tone grew urgent. We interrupt to update a breaking story. Nathaniel of the 5 Sacred Stars has just issued an official statement. Hearing this, Kaio's expression changed. His face filled with killing intent as he looked back. On the TV, the blond man began to speak. On behalf of the 5 Sacred Stars, I stand here to deliver an urgent message. We are deeply saddened by the incident involving Lucy. Rosie was one of our comrades. We are deeply saddened by the incident involving Lucy. Rosie was one of our comrades. He spoke with great sorrow, but Kaio saw through the performance. It only made him more irritated, since the 5 sacred stars clearly intended to feign ignorance. Just like what they did 20 years ago. They haven't changed at all. They lie without blinking, ready to do anything to protect their heroic status. People like Asa and me aren't worth their concern, we're just stepping stones on their path. Based on how he acted then, Nathaniel very likely was the ringleader who pushed me into being expelled. Which makes sense, he is calculating, cautious with every move, and right now no one knows his whereabouts. Kaio also stayed calm, pulling out his phone as if to contact someone. In another scene, inside a strange church, a girl knelt before the altar as if praying. Behind her, a stranger stepped forward and said, he said so, Sir Claudia. In front, Claudia didn't bother to turn around, merely replied coldly, is that so? I understand. Go now. After saying this, she resumed praying, Lord, please guide us toward a future full of light. Cut to Ingon's training room. He had just been warned by a subordinate. Lord Ingon, the council meeting is about to begin. Hearing that, Ingon casually tossed the weight to the floor and growled, I understand, I'm coming right away, Lucy. What the hell is she thinking? Ingon's voice was full of anger. Not long after, the secret meeting of the 5 sacred stars took place. And of course, the chair was Nathaniel. Seeing everyone assembled, he spoke, all right, we will begin the 5 sacred stars council meeting. Seeing everyone assembled, he spoke, all right, we will begin the 5 sacred stars council meeting. On the TV screen, Claudia kept her praying posture as she declared, so the attacker exposed Lucy's illegal experiments, truly despicable. Elsewhere, Ingon agreed, snarling, what the hell is that Lucy doing? She stained the honor of the 5 sacred stars. In response to these remarks, Nathaniel slowly sat down and spoke. That is true, but these experiments were carried out by Lucy alone, initiated by her. The rest of us, the 5 sacred stars, were unaware of this. For someone like Nathaniel, how could he not have known? Yet he chose to place all the blame squarely on Lucy. As for Heidke, he immediately grasped Nathaniel's intent and couldn't help but admire him inwardly. Indeed, Nathaniel is always rational. In other words, they were simply dumping all the guilt on Lucy and abandoning her. I don't know about Claudia and Ingon, but Nathaniel certainly knew about Lucy's experiments. Yet he abandoned her so easily. The more he thought, the more Heidke broke out in a cold sweat at Nathaniel's decisiveness and coldness. After a few seconds, he calmed slightly and glanced anxiously at a letter beside him, reminding himself, no, the important thing now is to follow his instructions. On this side, Claudia spoke up, I'm quite curious about that attacker. To explain, Heidke said, there is a sealed letter sent to the academy from the person who attacked Lucy. He spoke as he held up the letter for everyone to see, causing the others to startle. A letter from the attacker, come on, read it now, the group urged. Heidke looked at the letter in his hand, of course I'll read it. The letter's contents, I have returned to the present world from inside that gate. I will deal with all of you, so just wait, Monsieur Akizo. The moment they heard that name, the faces of the 3 others changed immediately, especially Nathaniel. Her face was drenched in sweat from worry. A trembling voice rang out full of hope, could someone be impersonating Kaio Akizo? The blond man pondered briefly, then shook his head. No, he couldn't know about the inside of that gate unless he had been there himself. The sender must be Kyo Akizo. Hearing that, the nun rubbed her chin and thought for a moment. Maybe he used time magic. Before she could finish, the big man in Gon snapped. Why should we worry? If Kyo Akizo truly has returned, we just need to overthrow him again. The big man spoke with lethal intent, and Nathaniel fully agreed. Ingon has a point, we don't need to act hastily. On this side, Claudia still seemed a bit uneasy and was about to say more, but Nathaniel cut her off. Why don't we watch what Kyo Akizo will do? And so the brief meeting ended in haste. After shutting down his computer, Ingon walked to the window, looked outside, and said angrily, Kyo Akizo, you are the one person I will never forgive. In another development, after the meeting ended, Principal Heidki Yoa hurriedly reported the situation to the protagonist. His voice came through the phone, so following your instructions, I have carried out your orders. Hearing this, Kaio remained calm and said, I understand. Having said that, he leaned back cheerfully, continuously calculating his next move in his head. So Nathaniel didn't act immediately. He's very cautious, but that's fine. Once they realize I'm back, they won't be able to sit still anymore. First, I'll deal with those whose whereabouts I already know. With that thought, he happily ordered his hound, all right, Yoa, execute. On the other end, Yoa's anxious voice sounded, what are we going to do next? Seeing his hound worried, Kaio reassured him, it's not that hard, you just need to arrange for me to be transferred to an academy connected to Ingon. Heike seemed to guess Kaio's intent and asked, so next you're targeting Ingon? Kaio candidly admitted, yes, using a short-term study abroad program should be easy, right? Turning to Yoa, since he's allied with Kaio, even if he didn't want to, he had to warn. Let me make this clear, Ingon isn't like me or Luzi. You won't find any bad rumors or shady deals about him. This warning made Kaio fall silent for a moment, but then he calmly said, even so, at least I have to see his face once. The formalities, I'll leave those to you. Saying that, he hung up, cast a cold look at the outside scene. Muttering under his breath, even if there are no rumors about him, that doesn't change the fact he betrayed me 20 years ago. Time passed quickly, as arranged by that Yoa. Our protagonist soon received a spot to study abroad. Cutting to Kyo's location, at that moment he glanced around and whispered, so this is Germany. They confirmed a connection between this country's academy and Ingon. I'll use the German academy to get close to him. But now I must get to the academy first. With that thought, the protagonist moved quickly. But now I must get to the academy first. With that thought, the protagonist moved quickly. Before he was drawn by a loud commotion, the leeches of the place, Kyo glanced to the side and saw a Japanese girl being harassed by some drunk men. However, he couldn't understand what they were saying due to the language barrier. Thinking it over, they spoke a completely different language here, so I'll use the void to automatically translate. Acting on the thought, Kyosuke used his magic, projecting it in all directions. Soon the words began to flow into his ears. The man in the brown shirt sneered, don't say it like that. Come on, little sister, what's wrong with going with us for a bit? Nearby, the man in the black jacket chimed in, going with us won't waste your time, come with me. Answering them, the black-haired girl kept a disgusted look and replied, you're exactly why I call people like you leeches. I'm not going with a bunch of gutter scum like you. Her words seemed to anger the two thugs. What did you say, little sister? You're being rude, we have to teach you a lesson. As he spoke, the man in black reached forward and grabbed the girl's shoulder tightly, making her face darken. But at that moment, an intervening voice rang out, hey, why don't you guys get lost and leave her alone? The sudden voice caught the attention of all three in front. The brown-haired man turned and challenged Kyosuke. Who the hell are you? On this side, Kyosuke began cursing straight away. I told you to fuck off, you trash. The uninterrupted insults drove the two thugs wild. Without hesitation, both of them focused their power into their fists, forming blazing golden flames as they charged, intent on teaching Kyosuke a lesson. You little dog, don't underestimate us. They shouted and launched fiery punches at Kyosuke. Unfortunately for them, unaware of how strong the man before them was with only a flick of his hand. Kyosuke easily sent them flying, leaving both of them sprawled like dead dogs. This even startled the black-haired girl. Just one strike and you took them down. Who exactly is this student? Luckily, Kyosuke didn't hit too hard, so the two thugs recovered quickly and fled in a hurry. We are truly sorry. Watching them stumble away, the black-haired girl turned to thank him. Yeah, thank you for helping me. Kyosuke just shook his head, no problem. After saying that, he scanned the surroundings again. At that moment, the crowd of extras were gossiping and some even took out phones to take pictures. Feeling uncomfortable, Kyosuke said, looks like we've attracted a crowd, let's get out of here. With that, the two quickly left the chaotic area. Behind them, the black-haired girl seemed a bit thoughtful. The last time someone helped me like that was when I met that person. Time passed and Kyosuke and the stranger had walked quite a distance. When they saw no one was talking around them anymore, The stranger spoke up. Hey, I just want to thank you for what you did. Because of you, things didn't get worse. For Kyosuke, dealing with those thugs was just something he did casually, so he didn't pay it much mind. I told you, don't worry about it. He also had a bit of thought about the girl's demeanor. She's probably just the responsible type. I feel like I've met her somewhere before. Unlike Kyosuke's many suspicions, the black-haired girl turned and asked, by the way, your uniform, are you a Japanese student? The question snapped Kyosuke back and he nodded. Yes, that's right. I just arrived today on a short exchange program. I'm on my way to the training academy. He explained calmly. To his surprise, the black-haired girl smiled and offered, in that case, let me take you there to say thanks. With someone willing to guide him, the protagonist naturally didn't refuse. Thanks a lot. And so the two continued walking together, chatting as they went. Kyosuke asked, are you traveling around the world? The stranger just shrugged at the question. Yeah, I have my own circumstances. Her casual but vague answer made Kyosuke more curious. Is she the same age as me? It's rare to see a girl traveling alone like this. Unable to hide his curiosity, Kyosuke asked again, don't you encounter danger traveling alone? Didn't you just get caught up in a situation like that? The stranger waved her hand and laughed. I'm fine, I may look like it, but I know a few spells. That answer not only failed to reassure Kyosuke, but made him more worried. He thought, didn't she just get grabbed a moment ago? Putting that aside, the short-haired girl stroked her chin and asked, so, are you studying at the training academy? Kyosuke replied, is there a problem? The black-haired girl glanced at him. Well, the performance, many students there think the same way. They even have a ranking system within the class. Like their own hierarchy, and they even have a reward point system based on achievement. Hearing that, Kyosuke simply nodded. I see. He quickly grasped the meaning of her words. It sounded like they valued achievement even more seriously than in Japan. According to what Yoa said, Ingan often holds regular training sessions for upper-tier students. That means if I want to get close to Ino, I have to make a mark in that achievement-based environment. This is perfect, exactly the kind of challenge I like. Thinking of that, Kyosuke couldn't hide his excitement. Then turned back to the stranger. Quickly she pointed ahead and said, look, we've arrived. It was the Lan Din Training Academy. Before them stretched the academy's vast campus. Seeing they had arrived, Kyosuke waved goodbye. This is enough, thanks. Behind him, the black-haired girl waved back. No problem. I haven't introduced myself. I'm Sister Ao's Duki. She said this while extending her hand. Seeing that, Kyosuke took her hand and introduced himself in return. I remember now, I'm Asai Kyosuke. The moment she heard the protagonist's name, Sister Ao's expression changed, becoming emotional as if she couldn't believe it. This caught Kyosuke's attention. He asked, what's wrong, very quickly. Sister Ao's composed herself and shook her head. It's nothing, your name just reminds me of someone I know. Well then, goodbye. Good luck at the academy. With that, the black-haired girl turned and left. As Kyosuke watched her retreating figure, he felt a bit thoughtful. Sister Ao's, there's something about her that lingers in my mind. But oh well, let's go. With that, he quickened his pace and entered the school grounds. However, not long after, trouble found the protagonist when he heard a tone full of arrogance. Hey, you there, are you the one? The voice belonged to an arrogant redhead. Faced with his attitude, Kyosuke remained calm and replied, and who are you, you brat Dukan? Kyosuke's words made the redhead furious. He shouted, who are you calling Dukan? Not every day do we get a Japanese exchange student moving here. I figured you weren't anything special, but so you don't get the wrong idea about this place, I'll give you a little welcome, he said, pressing his face close to Kyosuke to intimidate him. As for Kyosuke, a single glance told him what the redhead meant. That only made the protagonist sigh inwardly. Oh man, I just arrived and I've already met a weirdo. Just as she said, maybe he wanted to test himself with a fight. Thinking that, Kyosuke casually tossed his satchel to the side and said, all right. I'll fight you. Seeing this, the redhead immediately accepted the bet. Even feeling a bit pleased inside, good that you're willing to play by the rules. Then let's fight. With that, he began to use his power, controlling chunks of rock to hover around him. Then fired them straight ahead, fast as bullets. Fired them straight ahead, fast as bullets. With a single, effortless wave of his hand, Kyosuke easily dispersed the entire attack, leaving the redhead's face looking stunned. But not letting him be surprised for more than a few seconds, Kyosuke's cold voice rang out. Quantity may be large, but your power is too weak. If you're going to use earth demon magic, at least do it like this. Along with the words, a massive earth sphere appeared in his hand. Without any hesitation, Kyosuke threw it forcefully forward. The redhead narrowly escaped, but the rock slammed into the wall behind them, leaving a large hole. Just seeing the damage it caused was enough to make the thug tremble all over. Leaving a large hole. Only then did he realize that the person before him was a true monster. He wondered to himself who this monster could possibly be. In a different scene, it cut to Ya. She was walking while contacting someone by phone. Yes, that's right, I met Asai Kyosuke this Saturday, she said. I'll stay in the area and continue observing the target, she said coldly. In her hand was a stack of documents containing all kinds of information about the protagonist. Back with the protagonist, he had just received his student ID from an attendant and quickly left the administrative office. As he walked, Kyosuke looked at the card in his hand and thought, all the paperwork is done, I can finally enter the local dungeon. Previously the students were auto-translated, so it's a bit different from when I was in Japan. From Kyosuke's view, his student card displayed basic info like Landin Training Academy. Asayosuke Void Attribute Level 41 0 points. Seeing the 0 points line, our protagonist quickly guessed this must be the point system Sister Ao's mentioned. It seems to track dungeon exploration and performance. Thinking that, Kyosuke casually slipped the card into his jacket pocket and reassured himself. Oh well, I don't have classes today, I should go see what the dungeon in this area is like. With that, Kyosuke hurried off. Unbeknownst to him, the redhead he'd beaten earlier was secretly watching Kyosuke from behind, his face thoughtful as if pondering something. Time passed quickly, cutting to the front of an unidentified dungeon gate. Before entering, Kyosuke reminded himself once more, if I want to reach Anon, I have to raise my special class rank first. Maybe I'll start earning points in this high-level dungeon. Without any hesitation, our protagonist stepped inside. Soon the interior of the dungeon unfolded before Kyosuke, a wide corridor. From afar, a few skeletal soldiers began to drift forward, which piqued the black-haired youth's interest. Let's see what kind of monsters will charge out. Undead now, some of them are pretty strong. I didn't encounter these in Japan, but I learned their weakness back when I was Misei Tokyo Akizo. Thinking that, Kyosuke used his magic, enveloping his palm in a blazing yellow flame. Meanwhile, on the opposite side, the skeletal soldiers caught the scent of a living person and lunged forward like rabid dogs. One of them gripped its axe tightly and swung hard forward. Fortunately, Kyosuke was quick enough to dodge aside, otherwise he might have been cleaved in two by its force. On this side, Kyosuke prepared to counterattack. He thought to himself that undead collapse under powerful strikes and fire. As he thought that, he unleashed a fire punch, striking the skeletal soldier's abdomen with full force, breaking its spine in two and sending its upper body flying backward. Seeing their comrade felled in a single blow, the two remaining undead froze, not daring to move. Seeing this, Kyosuke proactively extended his hand and taunted, "Keep coming, dive at me." Time passed quickly, now the area was filled with the shattered bones of the undead. Kyosuke strolled forward nonchalantly with his hands in his pockets. As he walked, he muttered, "This must be the final room, the boss is probably waiting here." Thinking that, Kyosuke quickened his pace. And very soon he encountered the dungeon's boss. At a glance it resembled a lick, the powerful aura it emitted made even the Suke acknowledge it inwardly. Is this the boss? Its presence was truly oppressive. First, try fire and see how it goes. I'll attack it first with fire magic. With that thought, Kyosuke quickly hurled a fireball forward. However, the lick reacted extremely fast, swinging its staff aside, and simultaneously released a purple energy that collided with the fireball, causing both attacks to dissipate in midair. Seeing that, Kyosuke wasn't overly surprised. It nullified the fireball, makes sense, after all it's a boss. Turning back to face it, the lick began to take the initiative, channeling mana into its staff and releasing a mass of purple liquid that looked extremely dangerous. Though unsure what this attack was, Kyosuke nimbly leaped backward to evade. Sure enough, the next scene made his face go rigid. All because the floor beneath had been corroded into a large molten hole. This made Kyosuke's hair stand on end, the sphere melted everything it touched. It was an advanced magic. But I can also use it to create an advantage for myself. Thinking that, a smile quickly appeared on his face. Perhaps the lick felt provoked, because a second later it fired 3 more magic spheres forward in succession. However, our protagonist had already formed a plan in his head. He thought, I'll concentrate my magic on my souls and increase propulsion. Thanks to this magic, Kyosuke's speed visibly increased. His body became a streak of green light, easily dodging all the attacks until he closed in right in front of the lick, leaving it dazed. Not stopping there, Kyosuke continued to taunt, "Let's see if you can withstand your own attack." In his palm now sat a purple energy orb formed from the lick's own power. Before the lick could react, the protagonist slapped the orb straight into its face, causing its face to corrode visibly. Cries of pain echoed all around. With green smoke rising, its body helplessly began to dissolve. Back to Kyosuke, he had to admit the effectiveness of that spell. It worked, but because it's an advanced spell, I can't replicate it perfectly. I need to upgrade my void magic first. More importantly, there's someone else here. Thinking that, Kyosuke spoke softly. I know you're there, show yourself. Sure enough, not far away, the redhead silhouette had been standing there for who knew how long. When he was discovered, he gave a faint laugh and slowly stepped forward, saying, "Haha, didn't expect you to be so quick. I watched you fight, hope you don't mind." In response, Kyosuke wore a cold expression. "What's this? You came here to challenge me again." After saying that, he silently sized up the redhead. It seemed he still hadn't learned his lesson. But clearly he was hiding something. Opposite him, the redhead stepped closer and said cryptically, "Well, well, maybe it's time to clear things up." As he spoke, he pulled something out of his pocket, a movement that put Kyosuke on guard, who immediately took a fighting stance and strained his mind to read the other's intent. Damn, he actually has a plan. It can't be an enhancer like Ban Sen or some hidden weapon. Completely different from what I expected. Then suddenly the redhead dropped to his knees, bowed his head, and begged, "Please take me as your disciple." This unexpected action left Kyosuke stunned, his mind in chaos. What is he trying to do, and what's that cup for? Kyosuke wondered, but very quickly, as if reading his question, the redhead presented the cup and explained, "This is a Japanese-style Dora rite. I heard you offer sake to show respect. I couldn't help it. I'm captivated by your power. Teach me magic, please." Seeing his pleading, Kyosuke shuddered and stepped back 2 paces. "Are you mocking me?" Kyosuke muttered, but the redhead didn't relent and continued, "That fight was awesome. I feel so stupid for picking a fight with you." From Kyosuke's perspective, he could only sigh at the situation. Great, things just got more complicated. Thinking that, Kyosuke suddenly realized something and hurriedly patted the redhead's shoulder. The redhead himself thought Kyosuke was about to accept him as a disciple, but a second later, not far from them, a huge explosion occurred, sending rock and earth flying everywhere. The explosion was caused by the massive hand of a skeletal dragon striking the ground. It turned out the lick just now wasn't the real boss. Seeing its form, the red-haired youth's face went pale while Kyosuke's brows furrowed. So that one earlier wasn't the final boss. It seems the true boss is only appearing now. Beside him, the red-haired friend, having clearly seen the boss, quickly recalled something and said, "If I'm not mistaken, I've seen this in a book before. It's a skeletal dragon, a monster that wiped out an entire village long ago. I heard Lord Ngan barely had the strength to defeat it, so how is it here?" he said foolishly. Kyosuke heard this and said coldly, "I see." His tone startled the red-haired youth, who hurriedly warned, "Wait, don't tell me you actually intend to fight it. That's way too reckless, no matter how strong you are." Before he could finish, Kyosuke interrupted, "Relax, and from what you said, Ngan wasn't the one who killed it." Having said that, he began to calculate silently, "I get it. For the five-star saints, admitting that Misei Tokyo Akizo was the one who actually killed the monster would be troublesome. So they twisted the story for posterity, typical cowards. Now I just need to kill it once more, come on, let's fight," Kyosuke said in a voice full of iciness. And as if responding to the provocation, the skeletal dragon didn't hesitate. It slammed its massive bony hand into the ground, sending a shockwave radiating outward. Seeing that, the red-haired friend panicked. Before he could react, the shockwave hit and threw his small body backward. Only Kyosuke remained standing. However, after that attack, Kyosuke's expression darkened slightly as he thought, "Damn, it's stronger than 20 years ago, but that won't be a problem." With that, he focused power into his souls and darted toward the skeletal dragon. Swift as lightning, he sprang into the air, closing in on its skull. With his hand engulfed in blazing yellow flame, Kyosuke whispered, "Take this," and launched a 1,000-weight punch straight at the giant face, shattering the skull into many fragments in an instant. Not far away, the red-haired youth, witnessing this, was nearly petrified with excitement. "Oh my god, did you see that? My master blew that monster away." Hearing him, Kyosuke complained, "You're overdoing it. Weren't you just saying fighting it was suicidal?" "I don't want to explain much to you, but this isn't over yet," Kyosuke said as he turned to face forward. This made the red-haired youth's joyful face stiffen. Sure enough, moments later the skeletal dragon's head restored itself as if nothing had happened. It's regenerating," the red-haired friend exclaimed in amazement. Kyosuke seized the moment to inform him, "The skeletal dragon's vitality is higher than other undead. If you hit it half-heartedly, it'll just patch itself up." The red-haired youth was puzzled how Kyosuke knew this, but the protagonist didn't want to answer. "Because he was silently working out a plan. It's tougher than I thought." "If so, the next step is—" Back with the red-haired youth, seeing Kyosuke deep in thought, he also fell into contemplation. Is he planning to try something else? But how can one face that monster? Opposite them, the skeletal dragon began to lose patience, opening its jaws and letting out a deafening roar, then twisting its body to lash its massive tail straight at the two of them, forcing both to hurriedly duck and dodge the blow. However, the skeletal dragon's assault didn't stop. Immediately it swung its tail, targeting the most dangerous opponent, Kyosuke, but the clumsy beast's speed wasn't enough to trouble him. With a simple sidestep, he easily evaded the tail strike. Nearby, the red-haired youth worried for Kyosuke since he only appeared to be defending. He didn't know Kyosuke was secretly waiting for an opening to attack. His eyes studied the monster intently as he thought, "It's not time to make the image clearer yet, that's the nature of void magic. Created from imagination, the clearer the image, the stronger the power." He thought this while gathering some kind of magic into his palm. Unfortunately, the skeletal dragon didn't know that. It kept opening its jaws and lunging to attack. As it closed on Kyosuke, it unleashed a blast of heat with devastating force. Seeing Kyosuke take such a direct hit, the red-haired youth was nearly terrified out of his wits. He shouted "Master," yet a second later his eyes betrayed surprise. Because when the light faded, the image before him was Kyosuke clamping down on the skeletal dragon's razor teeth. No matter how it struggled, Kyosuke's hand tightened as he simultaneously cast magic, forming a spiraling surge of water that wrapped around the skeletal dragon's body. Finally, he froze its entire body solid, leaving the massive skeletal form unable to move an inch. Watching the fight end, the red-haired youth could only stare with his mouth agape. In astonishment, unbelievable, he's way too strong. Time passed quickly. Before long the two had left the dungeon. Of course, the red-haired kid still chattered behind the protagonist. "Master, wait for me over here." Kyosuke heard this and sighed wearily. "Why speak so clumsily?" In response, the red-haired youth merely smiled. "Well, you know, I say it out of respect." Then he noticed Kyosuke staring at his student card and curiously asked, "What are you focused on your student card?" Kyosuke nodded and explained, "I'm just calculating how many points a dungeon raid yields." "You're Mateo, right? How do those points affect class ranking?" Mateo stroked his chin, pondered briefly, then explained, "This is just a rough guide, but every 10,000 points advances you one class, so to reach a special class you'd need about 30,000 points. But unfortunately dungeon points are fixed rate, and the skeletal dragon you just defeated gives no extra points." After hearing that, the protagonist quickly did the math. "I got 500 points from that dungeon, meaning I'd have to grind dungeons 600 times to qualify. Looks like getting into the special class will take a lot of time," he said softly. Mateo, a bit surprised, exclaimed, "So you really are aiming for the special class?" At that, as if he remembered something, Mateo cheerfully suggested, "Oh, there's a shortcut to earn points faster." Before he finished, Kyosuke leaned in close to Mateo, demanding, "Tell me." Mateo shouted in alarm, "Hey, too close. The Celestial Festival is taking place in a month. It's an event where students compete directly against each other in assigned challenges. And the winner receives 20,000 points." At the mention of this reward, Kyosuke's gaze sharpened more than ever. "Delicious. If I take first place, I'll close the gap with Ingon in no time." Thinking that, Kyosuke clenched his fist and declared, "I will claim first place at this celestial festival." And so time quickly passed. A month later, on the day of the Academy's Celestial Festival, all students intending to compete for points had gathered at the venue. The announcer's voice rang across the square, "All right, the Celestial Festival will now begin." In a corner of the square, Kyosuke, eager to quickly join the special class, of course could not be absent. Beside him was Mateo, who cheerfully said, "Finally the festival is here." Kyosuke only nodded coldly. As a reply, while still calculating how to achieve first place, if he accumulated enough points and took the top spot, he'd be promoted to the special class. "If that happens, I'll take one step closer to the bastard who betrayed me 20 years ago." From the high platform, an academy professor's explanatory voice continued, "Your task is simple, seize the gem atop the highest tower. The method doesn't matter, you can fight your way up or climb directly, the choice is yours. Show us the strength you've trained for." The resolute tone made Mateo break into a nervous sweat, while Kyosuke smiled with delight. He thought to himself, "Sounds exactly like something a performance-driven student would do, just my style." A moment later, having recovered his composure, Mateo kept punching his palm to warm up, babbling, "Master will take first place at all costs." Hearing that, Kyosuke could only sigh in exasperation. When he learned the Celestial Festival only accepted pairs, he didn't know what to do. Fortunately, he already had someone ready. Before he could think further, a familiar voice called from ahead, "Hello there, Kaios." The newcomer was none other than Soao. Her appearance surprised Kyosuke. "You're here too," Soao replied with a smile. "Yeah, I came to see you shine." Standing beside them, Mateo, excited by the pretty girl, eagerly asked, "Who's this beauty? Master, is she your girlfriend?" Kyosuke shot back bluntly, "Don't be ridiculous." Before the greeting could continue, the students suddenly grew restless and began shouting, "Hey, look over there." At that moment, a large screen appeared before them. And to everyone's shock, the figure on the screen was none other than the traitor Ingon. His appearance filled Kyosuke's face with murderous intent, as if he wanted to leap forward and attack immediately. Cut to the stands where a black-haired professor smiled and said, "Lord Ingon, we're honored by your attendance at our festival." Ingon replied lightly, "Don't fuss, I'm just curious about this festival. To see if any of these young mages contain a golden egg." Back to Kyosuke, his face still radiated killing intent. Seeing that, Soato also had her own thoughts. Soon after, a proclamation rang out, "Students, please enter the tower." At the command, everyone quickly entered the tower. Quickly, the interior revealed itself, a spiral structure with many stairways leading upward. Seeing everyone rushing off, Mateo said, "All right, let's go." Kyosuke nodded in agreement. However, things were not so easy. Before the group could step onto the stairs, a loud explosion occurred. The main cause was a giant wolf. Its appearance made Mateo's eyes roll back as if he were about to die. He complained, "Good heavens, from the very start, really. Kiyosuke shrugged and replied, as expected, they've pre-ranked the creatures. Hearing that, Mateo quickly turned and asked, what should we do now, master? Before he could finish asking, he realized that Kiyosuke's figure had vanished without him noticing. Mateo hurriedly scanned the area and saw Kiyosuke charging in, throwing a straight punch at the giant wolf's face, sending it sprawling aside like a dead dog. After defeating the monster guarding the stairs, the protagonist calmly turned back and reminded him, what are you hesitating for? Move quickly. Mateo awkwardly nodded, okay, I'm coming right away. Thus the two quickly ascended to the second floor. Meanwhile outside, their entire battle was broadcast for everyone to watch. Sure enough, the traitor Ngon began to pay attention to him, his eyes narrowing slightly as he murmured, a Japanese, huh. Unlike his reaction, the other students were full of admiration. No way, that student killed the monster with just one blow. Even so, Otto broke out in a cold sweat at Kiyosuke's strength. I knew he wasn't ordinary. Cut to Mateo, having just defeated a monster. Kiyosuke asked, are you all right? Mateo gave him a thumbs up and affirmed, I'm still full of energy, master. Seeing his junior was fine, Kiyosuke hurriedly moved on. Good, then don't dawdle, off we go next. Mateo trailed behind listlessly. And so the two continued upward along the stair steps, until Kiyosuke suddenly realized something and shouted, stop. Indeed, at that moment, a large explosion unexpectedly occurred before them. But this time it wasn't caused by a monster. It was caused by humans. The one responsible was a blonde student using magic to block their path. His eerie laugh rang out, hee hee, you won't get past us. Mateo, annoyed, clenched his fist, pointed ahead and cursed, these bastards are cheating. Hearing that, the two students not only felt no shame but even taunted back. What did he say? Too far, I can't hear. Well then, see you later. You losers, just sit and watch. With that, the two hurried forward, driving Mateo crazy. Hey, come back here. He shouted, then turned to ask his master, Master, what should we do now? Kiyosuke replied nonchalantly, do what now? Easy, just fly right over them. Before Mateo could understand, Kiyosuke had grabbed his shoulders tightly and leapt forward, pulling him along into flight. Cutting to the two blonde students. At that moment, a large door stood before them like a boss room entrance. Seeing this, the blonde said cheerfully, great, this is the final room. This is easier than I thought. Beside him, the blue-haired one responded excitedly, exactly, there's no way we'd lose to a Japanese guy. That's what they thought. However, a familiar voice suddenly sounded behind them. How could that be? The sound startled them both and they spun around in panic, shouting loudly, what the, how did you get here? In response, Kiyosuke only sneered, I didn't want to tell you this, but the obstacle you raised hardly slowed me down at all. Behind him, Mateo was nearly exhausted but still tried to play along with his master. That's right, there's no way we're losing to you clowns, you're all going to die. He spoke, trembling, pointing forward. The two students realized Kiyosuke was no pushover, so they proactively cast magic, shouting, don't underestimate us, we'll crush you. However, their casting speed appeared incredibly slow in Kiyosuke's eyes. Before their spells could fully form, he rushed in and delivered each of them a chop to the neck, sending both of them rolling and passing out on the spot. Seeing that, Mateo was at first shocked, but then could not stop grinning. I didn't even see him move, forget that little scuffle. The two opened the door and entered the final room. Inside was a crystal orb placed on a stone pedestal. Kiyosuke guessed that the crystal was the gem they needed for the quest, and Mateo said excitedly, yes, we're the first ones here. But nothing comes easy. Kiyosuke immediately realized it wasn't over yet. Right after he spoke, a host of knights materialized around the crystal, as if summoned from nowhere, leaving both of them baffled as to where they came from. This situation also baffled the professors watching outside, who gasped, what is this? What are those armored knights? That wasn't in the program. Only the traitor Ngon was pleased, for he was the one who had set up this trick. He thought to himself, excellent, let's see if they can overcome this challenge. Ngon's face spread a sly smile as he said, I mean, if it ends too quickly, where's the fun in that? The black-haired professor beside him could only force a laugh. Ha ha, you are indeed merciless. The big fellow remained resolute. If they want to become great mages, so be it, this is nothing. He silently calculated that of course no student could pierce that number of foes. How could they break through to seize the gem? Let's see what they've got, he said with interest as he watched the screen closely. Cut to Mateo's position. Seeing a horde of monsters summoned, he panicked. Master, what do we do? Kiyosuke replied coldly. If we don't defeat them, we can't get the gem. There is no other choice. Hearing that, Mateo asked in more detail, defeat them, but there are so many and they look really tough. Kiyosuke answered with a serious expression. Even so, I must do it. If I want to achieve my goal, I have to succeed. Looking into his determined eyes, Mateo, though still worried, could only force himself to reply, all right. Then I'll support you, even if only a little. He said this as he began cracking his knuckles to get ready, not noticing that behind him a construct had already swung its sword at lightning speed. Fortunately, Mateo reacted in time and ducked to avoid it, otherwise he might have met the Grim Reaper. Elsewhere, Kiyosuke was also facing an attack from a construct. However, that strike was nothing to worry about. He immediately used body enhancement technique, his whole body enveloped in a pale golden aura, then lightly pinched the tip of its sword with 2 fingertips. Afterwards, Kiyosuke wrapped energy around his right hand, clenched it into a fist and punched straight forward. sending the entire construct flying up into the air. The sight left the students watching outside gaping, fighting barehanded. Back with Kyosuke, he surged forward and unleashed another fiery fist, causing the construct's body was sent flying backward, dragging a whole bunch of constructs to tumble to the ground. In a single blow, there were no constructs left standing around the protagonist. Seeing that, Mateo couldn't help but admire. Master is truly top tier. Not only him, even the big guy in Gon secretly admitted. That Japanese brat, he has some useful magic. Does he intend to take them all on by himself? But it won't be that easy, he thought as he slammed his hand down on the table. Sure enough, just as he suspected, in the tower the constructs that had been defeated were replaced by another wave within 3 seconds. Mateo's eyes rolled in fear. They're duplicating again. What was the Academy thinking to let these attack us? At the same time, Sasuke thought the same. With numbers like that he can't win, but I still want to see if he can break through. So Asai Kyosuke, what do you plan to do now? Back at the protagonist's position, a construct wielding a giant axe rushed in, swinging straight at him. Luckily, Kyosuke was quick and jumped back to dodge. He scanned the area, calculating the number of enemies in his mind. About 30 of them, quite a few, but compared to before this is nothing. Unaware of Kyosuke's thoughts, the constructs in front began attacking again, giving him no time to rest. 2 constructs hurled their spears forward like arrows. In response, Kyosuke used his earth magic to raise a wall of dirt to block the attack. Of course, the constructs coordinated smoothly. While some attacked from the front, others circled to his back to strike stealthily. However, Kyosuke soon noticed this. He swung his arm and used wind magic, slashing out a blade of air that knocked all the constructs behind him far away. But very quickly, other constructs took their place and slowly closed in on Kyosuke. This made his eyes narrow in annoyance, thinking that defeating them one by one was pointless. I want to sweep them all away with a powerful spell. But in a situation like this, I don't have time to create a new formation. That means the best choice is a spell I've seen before. That way I won't waste much time recasting it. Just use it wholesale. Kyosuke sighed, recalling the magic that Headmaster Yoko had once used. Next, he began to activate his void magic, causing the earth and stones around them to suddenly fly upward, as if controlled by an invisible force. Seeing this, the big guy in Gon sprang from his seat in shock as if he'd recognized the spell. Back at Kyosuke's position, he began sweeping his arms to both sides, combining earth and wind magic, forming a fused spell of gale and rock that blasted outward in all directions, so no construct could withstand the assault. Its power was so great that the group of students outside could feel the shockwave it produced. Soon after, the spell slowly dissipated, leaving inside the room only the wreckage of scattered constructs. At that moment, Kyosuke had already approached the crystal orb. He closed his hand around it in his palm and whispered, "Done." Elsewhere, Madu didn't know where to hide. After seeing Kyosuke complete the task, he happily ran out to celebrate. He did it, he really did it, master, just like that. The group cheered, congratulating the protagonist on his success. Nearby, Sasuke gaped in astonishment at the male lead's power. Fusion magic, he can use that too. His power is profoundly terrifying. Cut to Ngon, who laughed with obvious delight. Haha, so he can use the magic YO spent 20 years developing when he was just a student. Asaki Kyosuke, interesting indeed. If he gets into the special class, I guarantee I'll train him properly. He said this with a crafty look on his face. In the assembly hall, a man on the podium announced that it was time to reveal the students promoted to the special class this term. Please, Kyosuke, come up on stage. Kyosuke calmly slid out his chair. He politely stood up without replying. Under the stands, a group seated at the edge whispered, "He's really talented, only been here a month and already achieved this. You saw him at the festival, right?" A guy sitting with his arms crossed spoke enviously, "Crazy, a person can do that." Beside him was Mateo, who tapped his chin and smiled smugly, "He's my master." "Doing that is nothing special." The man on the podium spoke again. "Next is the armband ceremony. We have a special guest." Suddenly, Kyosuke's pupils changed. He frowned in puzzlement, thinking, a special guest. "Don't tell me you will speak next. Please give a warm welcome." The man in ceremonial dress drew back the curtain and stepped out slowly. He smiled as he revealed the figure. "Lord Ngon, the stage is yours." Hearing such an imposing name, the crowd below gasped and murmured, "What, really?" He nonchalantly took the armband. Kyosuke glanced at him impassively and inferred, he personally came to the academy, what's he plotting? Ying reached a spot near him. He studied Kyosuke's expression, sneered, and said, "You pleased me quite a bit at the Celestial Festival." Kyosuke's expression shifted. He politely lowered his eyes and answered hesitantly, "It's an honor." The man slowly handed the armband to him and he took it gently. Suddenly, Ying leaned close to Kyosuke's ear and coldly uttered his name. "Aseki Kyos, come to my domain tonight." Below the stands, Mio and the others looked puzzled and asked, "What's going on? What did he say to him?" On stage, Ying waved to greet them as cheers erupted below. The noise continued as he swept his cloak and left the room. Kyosuke clenched the armband, staring coldly at the image of him in thought. What exactly are you scheming?" The sky was pitch black as a magnificent, opulent castle stood ahead. In the great hall, the butler raised his hand to his chest and respectfully responded, "Aseki Kyosuke, is that you? We have been expecting you." Kyosuke put his hands in his pockets, his face calm as he followed the butler, wondering what Ngon wanted to say to him. Wait, has he learned I'm Issei Tokyo Akizu? Damn it, I wanted more time to prepare. If he already knows, then I have no other choice. The butler stopped at a room. He paused to look. Seeing the door open, Kyosuke steadied himself and thought, this could turn into a battle right here. He glanced at the room, then at the lavish spread Diaz had set before him. The man smiled and picked one up, a fork and knife in his hand for cutting the beef. He looked at him and said to sit down. After we eat we'll talk. Kyosuke approached the table and politely replied, excuse me. His gaze was full of coldness. He wondered inwardly, so what does he want? The meal was cleared. DS looked straight at him. Kyosuke said calmly, once more I want to say your performance at the Celestial Festival was impressive, especially the bout on the top floor. You really caught my attention. Now there's something I want to say. He lowered his face, a killing glint flashed in his eyes as he spoke coldly. What are you hiding from us? That look made Kyosuke uneasy. He thought inwardly, damned does he know. Under the table his hands clenched together as he weighed things. No, this can't be. If he truly knew I was Kyo Akizo, he'd have said so outright. He's surely probing for something else. At that, DS leisurely lifted his coffee cup and mentioned, the fusion spell you used on the top floor is the life work of Waihoa Ko. He spent 20 years developing it. How could you be able to use it? Hearing that, Kyosuke couldn't help but smile. He recovered his composure, realizing as he guessed that the man was merely curious about his magic. He looked the man squarely in the face and explained, back in Japan, Master Yo especially trained me. DS sipped the hot coffee and rasped, so that's when you learned fusion magic? Kyosuke replied politely, yes. Kyosuke put on a pleasant, practiced smile. Proudly he said that his master was indeed a good teacher and he owed him a great deal. Hearing this, DS chuckled dryly. He pondered a moment then said, it seems that's something the man developed. He uses it very skillfully. However, don't abuse that power. Otherwise you'll end up like Miss Tokyo Akizo, the one who nearly tore the world in two. Hearing DS mention his former name, his expression didn't show panic. DS turned his back to Kyosuke and returned to the old topic. You must have heard, 20 years ago the SSS-class disaster dungeon. He immersed himself in his power and eventually devised a twisted plan. DS's face was filled with anger and jealousy. He angrily continued, he lured monsters out of the dungeon, plotting to eliminate the rest of us, his allies. Kyosuke's expression changed. He froze at those words, wondering what to think. On this side, the man's jealous scowl deepened as he continued. Also, he could be the sole remaining hero. With that mindset, Kyo Akizo put that plan into action back then. Fortunately, we stopped him before things went wrong. Now Kyosuke's fingers curled into a trembling fist under the table as he struggled with his thoughts, thinking, what the hell is going on? Those bastards, I can't let this go. Suddenly DS turned to him and warned in a low voice, that's why I'm warning you, don't let power consume you. Kyosuke cut him off and replied seriously, it's fine, sir. Power is meant to fight evil. His face brimmed with confidence as he said firmly, and I will do whatever it takes to become stronger than anyone. In DS's eyes the image of him appeared, and deeper within it was the figure of Kaya Kizo. A delighted smile spread across his face, and in a booming voice he said, just like at the festival, you are truly fascinating. All right, I'll reward that spirit of yours. At that moment DS moved closer to Kasuke. He looked up at him skeptically and asked, a reward? DS lowered his gaze and replied, yes, for the next training session I will be your sparring partner. His eyes probed him as he gave a cold smile and added, of course if you agree. Kyosuke stood, pulled out his chair and spoke courteously. I understand, I would be honored to receive your guidance. The two stared at each other. Night fell and stars appeared in the sky as familiar people walked the streets. Kyosuke's face was cold. He walked on in thought, musing, this is the best reward I could ask for. Just wait, I'll crush you with everything I have and settle the grudge I've carried for 20 years. It was the special class's regular training day at the school. In the training hallway, a group of soldiers chatted leisurely. Hey, today's the regular training day for the special class, right? One guy, book slung over his shoulder, said casually to the person next to him, I'm so jealous. They get to meet Lord Ngan. I wish he'd train me too. Before he finished, the other felt a chill at his back. He glanced back and saw the murderous gaze of Kyosuke. Kyosuke sat on a bench glaring at the two. Both turned pale and the other stammered, hey, let's go. The other guy nervously muttered, okay. Both bolted away in a panic, leaving Kyosuke with a cold face staring forward as he murmured Ngan's name. At last I can settle this debt. He had promised to spar with me during today's training. Maybe he only intends to teach some curious kid a lesson, but not me. I will utterly crush him and make him regret betraying me 20 years ago. Right then in the school's training yard a hoarse voice rang out. All right, the regular training session starts now. Please welcome Lord Ngan. As he finished, a man slowly came into view for everyone. DS walked while observing the soldiers' movements and then replied. Instantly, Kyosuke's eyes narrowed. He remained calm and thought, he's here. The man stepped forward a few paces and cautioned. I trust you, the Academy's finest students. You train your skills daily, but sometimes observing is also training. So today, I've decided to warm things up with a sparring match. Don't worry, I've already chosen my opponent. DS looked directly at Kyosuke, smiled faintly and called out, Asai Kasuke, please step forward. In the blink of an eye, Mateo was sitting in the stands, eyes wide as he blurted, holy crap. Skipping class to fight this is intense. Master is really fighting Lord Ngan. Suddenly, he noticed someone below and suspected it was the girl who had appeared at the Celestial Festival. Mateo rubbed his red nose and guessed, I get it, things between Master and her are progressing nicely, huh? Below, Suki felt a chill down her spine, arms crossed and silent, sensing a strange gaze somewhere. Oh well. A 5-star saint praised as the world's hero. Let's see what he'll do when facing an opponent like this. On the arena, DS's long robe fluttered lightly. He murmured, shall we begin now? Kyosuke's gaze was calm. He composed himself and thought of a counter. Ngan is one of the toughest among the 5-star saints. He's on a completely different level from Yako. But the one who will kneel today will be you. Seeing him ready, DS clenched his fingers, unleashed power, and announced, I'll strike first. His power concentrated in his hand, which quickly swung up, striking directly toward the targeted point. A terrible boom resonated. That punch nearly reached Kyosuke. He hastily raised his hand to dodge. The soldiers beside them also scrambled away, murmuring in shock, what? A magic attack. Even Suki urgently raised her hand, thinking, he only used the shockwave from the punch and it already tore the air. At that moment, Kyosuke crouched and unleashed full-body power, sneering contemptuously. Is he using body-strengthening technique? I'll counter with earth magic. Stones on the ground suddenly rose up, attacking directly into DS's spell. His expression remained calm as he continued to project power from his hand. He looked at Kyosuke with approval. You blocked it. Kyosuke rose, gently brushed sand from his clothes, and asked with a faint smile, that was body-strengthening technique. No wonder the strike was so heavy. Kyosuke glanced at the stone fragment and pondered, I barely managed to block it with reinforced rock. The force of that blow is insane. Suddenly, DS gave a harsh laugh and replied, you're mistaken. You haven't used body-strengthening technique yet. He said this as he tugged his robe aside. Kyosuke's expression darkened, his eyes locked onto him, as DS formed a golden orb of power in his hand and said coldly, now I'm using it. With that, he hurled the orb straight at his opponent. Kyosuke's face changed, he gasped, then quickly dodged the incoming fireball. DS launched increasing numbers of fireballs in succession, forcing him to struggle to evade. On the stands, Mateo frowned with worry. No way is Master being pushed back, what kind of attack is that? On the other side, DS's face grew more exhilarated. He took a defensive stance and rasped, trying to escape with wind magic. You have sharp instincts, but this battle isn't over yet. With that, he threw his strongest magical force straight at Kyosuke. Before the orb arrived, he hurriedly dodged. Clenching his fingers, he gritted his teeth, glanced at him, and thought, with destructive power like this, now is not the time to hold back. His expression gradually chilled, doubtfully thinking. He stopped. Could he be planning a counterattack? Sasuke's face turned serious. She pondered in silence. That's what he used at the Celestial Festival, fusion magic. Kyosuke's eyes lit up, filled with murderous intent. He used magic to make shards of rock fly up and hurl them straight at the target. DS quickly blocked the attack, his face fierce and ashen from gritting his teeth to withstand it. Suddenly, a thunderous explosion rang out, right beneath Kyosuke's feet. Through the spreading black smoke, he knelt to the ground. He frowned, thinking the shockwave has reduced the impact. This Ingon has grown stronger after 20 years. DS lowered his face, sneered, eyes full of killing intent. Good, very good, I shouldn't hide my cards anymore. A blinding surge of power radiated from behind DS, and Kyosuke raised his hand to shield his eyes. Under his hand, he calmly murmured, dawn is coming. He stared straight ahead, puzzled, what is that magic? DS lowered his gaze to Kyosuke, face taunting, and said coldly, come on, continue this battle. A terrible magical power burst forth from DS. Kyosuke took a deep breath, thinking, a spell even I don't know. So he learned that technique over the last 20 years. But he still keeps a cool head. I must take a defensive stance, it's fine, let's see how he attacks. Kyosuke's eyes flashed. His hand thrust forward and the ground began to crack, starting with this move. DS frowned and dodged earth magic. His eyes narrowed like blades. This attack hits a wide area, he won't be able to avoid it. The ground beneath DS immediately split, causing him to stagger. Seizing the opportunity, he spread his arms to activate the next technique. Once his stance is broken, I'll unleash fusion magic to finish him. A powerful strike surged as he intended, fusion magic. From the stands, Mateo cheered even louder. Well done, Master has unleashed fusion magic. Sasuke beside him was also drawn into the fight. He's losing balance midair, this is the perfect opportunity. Just as she predicted, this strike would land. But unbeknownst to anyone, the corner of DS's mouth quietly curved. He braced himself and shouted loudly, causing Kyosuke to be slowed by a few beats. What is he doing? Those boulders were actually stopped by his bare hands bit by bit. DS gradually reversed control of the swirling rocks aimed at him, even tearing them apart literally before they could reassemble. The earth and stones were pushed aside to both sides at once. DS stood there still cold and composed. Kyosuke couldn't believe his eyes. Did he just cut through my fusion magic? Sasuke, sweating at that overwhelming power, couldn't believe he had nullified magic at that level. He said to him in a low voice, that was an excellent attack. DS's body remained intact and shrouded in magic, but it couldn't penetrate my magical armor. Only then did Kyosuke realize, magical armor, I understand now that golden light is his armor. His hand clenched, but the fact he withstood the fusion magic without a scratch proved how terrifying that power was. He sneered, this armor doesn't just protect me. 1 foot forward, DS continued. It turns my body into a weapon, combining offense and defense as one. That is the essence of my magical armor. With a whoosh, he charged forward wearing a triumphant smile. I'm coming. He launched himself into the air, fists clenched. Kyosuke hurriedly jumped backward, a single blow shattering the spot where he just stood. Mio startled and shouted, what? Chunks of rock kept pelting Kyosuke. It took a long while for the dust to settle. He wiped the blood from his cheek, thinking, damn and gone, he's much stronger than 20 years ago. DS still stood firm as ever, and his magical armor was indeed troublesome. His eyes narrowed, his mind was no longer as at ease. I have a way to counter it, but that magic's incomplete, I'm not sure I can pull it off. DS flexed his wrist and said, you're not charging, fine then. Then DS darted in like lightning. I will finish this battle. Kyosuke frowned in irritation. Damn, I have no other choice. He gripped one hand with the other, grinding his teeth as he forced power into his palm. Seeing that, DS chuckled inwardly. Is he trying to create something? Does he think that can stop me? Suddenly, the space around him darkened. DS was baffled and confused. Seeing him strain to continue the technique, he narrowed his eyes maliciously, and DS's right hand swung up to knock Kyosuke away. He couldn't dodge in time, and took a hit, gritting his teeth through the pain, muttering in regret. As expected, I'm still not proficient with it. It took him a moment to steady himself and face DS. Suddenly, DS relaxed his fist. To Kyosuke's astonishment, he said, enough. DS replied indifferently, this is more than enough for a sparring match. We'll end it here today. This made Kyosuke's expression darken further, his clenched hand trembling. He casually announced to the students, this scheduled training session is over, dismissed. The students rushed to praise him. Lording Gon, that performance was amazing, truly inspiring for the students. Someone laughed, that AI guy put up a good fight, but in the end Lording Gon kept him on the back foot the whole match. Another nodded, the 5-star saint is really top tier. Only Matt went to console Kyosuke. Master, you did very well, no one can blame you for facing Ngon. He said nothing, only telling himself, I underestimated him, right now I cannot beat Ngon. His hand curled with determination. I must push void magic further and become stronger. Around them, the students' chatter continued cheerfully as usual. Sasuke quietly watched Kyosuke's back. No one here realized what potential aside Kyosuke was hiding. DS strode away from the crowd, recalling the sensations from the recent match. What was that moment? Bloodlust? Was he something else? A pleased smile appeared on DS's face. It's been a long time since I've had such an intense fight. Then he turned away with a steady back. It doesn't matter. Aside Kyosuke, he's not the kind of person who will end up here. Holding a glass of fine wine, DS calmly leaned back into the armchair, gently swirling the glass. He mused, it's been ages since a real battle excited me like this. He carefully kept the wine from spilling. But that aside Kyosuke, he was unexpectedly strong. He recalled the momentary shock in the fight. In that instant, he had genuinely felt fear. DS's deep eyes reflected on the wine's surface as distant memories surged back. I felt that feeling once before. A scream from the past suddenly echoed. That person stood before DS and gently said, all right, it seems I've won, haven't I? He knelt on the ground and looked up at Kyo Akizo. What was that just now? You've always hidden that magic from me, haven't you? Kyo Akizo laughed, hands on his hips. You nearly finished me over there just now. Besides, I have to keep my cards hidden until the last minute, right? Young DS sighed inwardly. You never change, you always fall outside my expectation. As he rose, he sighed, that's why you're my eternal rival. Once upright, DS invited, let's fight another match. Kyo Akizo clicked his tongue. While the present DS fell silent, sadly that memory makes me feel nostalgic. His face suddenly darkened. The past had been defiled and could not be cleansed. He couldn't suppress a sigh, yet he still remembered the thrill. He raised the glass to sip, when fighting someone of equal rank. DS's eyes brightened as if expecting something. So come, aside Kyosuke. Perhaps the uncertain future of that youth. Show me what you've got. Kyosuke looked up at the deep cavern before him. 20 years and it's still the same, huh? Looks like I can make use of it. His fists clenched. Right now I'm not skilled enough to fight Ngon. I need to train from scratch. The entrance exuded extreme gloom. Fortunately, this dungeon was perfect for that. Step by step, he moved inward. The pressure here made every step heavy. It had a gravity field much stronger than outside. No wonder Ngon could strike so powerfully. If I took a direct hit, I'd be done for. He lightly raised and lowered his hand, determined. So first I must make this body stronger. Just thinking that made him want to laugh. Once I can face him head-on, the magic I develop will deliver the finishing blow. Before him lay dragon and tiger swamps filled with thousands of monsters. He had only one goal, you wait, Ino. Time passed in the blink of an eye. It was now 3 days later. Sasuke watched the crowd go by, pondering, it's strange. Since that day, Asai Kyosuke hasn't returned to the dorm. The black-haired girl wondered where he could have gone. Suddenly she spotted a figure trudging along after class. Sasuke recognized Mio, looking wilted like a fatting flower, muttering, no master around, how boring. Sasuke recognized Mio, looking wilted like a fatting flower, muttering, no master around, how boring. A hardcore fan of the master. Hearing that, Sasuke silently scolded, what kind of fan is that? Then she realized the advantage of that. Alright, everyone thinking that actually makes things easier for me. Do you know where Kyosuke is? Mio scratched his head awkwardly. I'm not sure of the exact location, but I heard he went to the eastern forest to train or something. Mio scratched his head awkwardly. I'm not sure of the exact location, but I heard he went to the eastern forest to train or something. Sasuke narrowed her eyes, thinking the eastern forest. Could it be? In an instant, the black-haired girl spun and ran off. I know, thanks. Mio was left waving dumbfounded, no problem. The red-haired boy still naively thought she was being very enthusiastic. Before long, Sasuke had made her way to the forest where the dungeon sat, an underground lair hidden deep among the trees. Yes, it was the perfect place to train. She bit her lip, wondering, but how did he know about this place? He originally knew nothing of it. A suspicion formed in Sasuke's mind, slowly lifting the veil on a shocking secret. Sasuke's eyes flashed, sweat streaming down her cheek. Asai Kyosuke is Misei Tokyo Akizo, she recalled, about a month ago, when her superiors gave her a secret order to investigate anyone who might be Misei Tokyo Akizo in disguise, and his image clearly appeared. Asai Kyosuke was also on that list. Sasuke's hand tightened over her chest as she thought, if he truly is Misei Tokyo Akizo, then her steps grew heavy. The pressure here left her gasping. I'd been here once for another mission, and this place was as brutal as I remember. The tunnel ahead was pitch black, stretching seemingly without end. Has a Saikosuk trained here? Fortunately, she found the person she was looking for. Kyosuke stood towering among the neatly severed corpses of the monsters. There he was. But something about him felt very different. So much so that Suzuki hurriedly hid, not daring to reveal herself because his presence had completely changed. Looking around the cavern, she panicked. All these monsters, did he defeat them all by himself? Suki narrowed her eyes. An overwhelming aura radiated from Kyosuke, making her swallow hard. Everything felt beyond her imagination. After leaving the dungeon, Suzuki hurried to contact someone. Yes, that's right, the black-haired girl said hesitantly. At this rate, he could actually surpass Lord Ngan. The person on the other end exclaimed with interest. What about the possibility that he's Kyo Akizo? Suki fell silent for a moment, then answered, very high. The person on the other end chuckled softly and spoke with delight, just as I thought. With dozens kneeling at her feet, things are about to get very interesting. Bako Jiang raised a hand and shouted, everything. Her bright blue eyes sparkled, excitement rising as events unfolded exactly according to the deity's plan. In the dark cavern, crystals emitted a faint purple glow that lit the place. Kyosuke stood beside the corpse of a dragon, murmuring, it's done. He rubbed his wrists, concluding with joyful tone, this time I'll reach Ngan. In a modern room, a man was about to leave when the phone on the table suddenly rang. He turned back to the device, puzzled inwardly. Who is it? This person was the 5-star Saint Yoa Heidke. Heidke didn't hesitate and picked up, hello. On the other end, a middle-aged man spoke calmly, it's me. Hearing that voice, Heidke recognized it immediately, Anon. He cautiously asked, what's the matter? Only to hear DS coldly state a request, there's something I want to ask you. He went on to talk about a trainee named AIK. At that, Heidke was terrified, eyes wide. After a while, he relayed all the information. DS listened and calmly replied, I understand, that's all I needed to know. Heidke answered in a trembling voice, all right. When the call ended, he set the handset down. Heidke feared and worried. Inon asked me about Asai Kyosuke's past, but I can't say he's actually Kyo Akizo. He clutched his head, terrified with worry, thinking, if I reveal it, I'll be dead. Over at DS's place, he was staring at the phone, pondering something. His mood turned heavy and contemplative. Yoa is hiding something, but I can't find clear evidence. DS turned and walked away, weighing his options. At that moment, he suddenly noticed something on the floor, an envelope. DS looked at it suspiciously, wondering, did someone slip this under the door? He picked up the envelope, opened it, curious and guessing, who sent this? As soon as he saw the contents inside, DS was horrified, eyes widening. Clutching the letter tightly, hatred surged in his chest. I understand now. DS ground his teeth angrily, I knew it. Old memories flashed through his mind. On a high cliff sat two people. The short-haired one apologized sadly, sorry about today. Kyo Akizo, sitting beside him, paid little mind and replied, it's all right. Kyo Akizo leaned toward DS and said, your hometown was destroyed, of course I must help. He turned to him, hesitating slightly as he advised, but are you sure about this? Conquering the dungeon requested by the state would likely benefit you more. He threw his head back and looked at the sky, mocking. They're just high-ranking officials who want to show off their power. Kyo Akizo calmly explained, I'd rather help those who truly need it. DS laughed and remarked, my goodness, you're kind to the bone. He looked again at the scene before them and spoke cheerfully. Besides, Kyo Akizo sincerely praised, this place is truly beautiful. Hearing that, DS proudly recounted, it's called KD Hill, the best spot here to watch the sunset. Sensing his joy, you followed with praise. Indeed, I can tell you hold this place in high regard. Suddenly, DS called out his name, Kichizo. Kyo Akizo glanced at him questioningly, waiting for the next words. He grew serious and declared, I want to become stronger. DS spoke with unshakable resolve. Not just for my homeland, many places are threatened by dungeons. Upon hearing that, Kyo Akizo laughed with joy. Why not? I will cooperate with you. He then stood up passionately and announced, very well, I've decided to train harder while in this country. DS couldn't help but smile, agreed. He replied happily, it's decided then. Back in the present, he stood before the window, letting himself sink into thought. Afterwards, we often met on that hill to push our limits whenever we had free time. Recalling a certain moment, DS suddenly frowned, his gaze turning icy. But he couldn't contain his hatred and thought. Yet now a sea of flames has entirely consumed my mind. In the past, a young DS ran hurriedly through a field of red flames. At one point he suddenly stopped, his eyes focused in a terrified, incredulous stare. What caused him to react was the sight of Kyo Akizo's figure, standing ahead, laughing loudly. Remembering this, DS clenched his fist in fury and vowed, I will not drag Nathaniel, Claudia, or the other 5-star saints into this. He declared in hatred, I will personally end Kyo Akizo. At the academy, Kyosuke was walking down the corridor. He walked while pondering, the next scheduled training will be in a week. Then I'll rematch Ngan. Kyosuke vowed coldly, this time I will definitely. Suddenly someone called out, cutting off his thought, Master. From behind, MTO hurried over, shouting happily, Master, you're back. Seeing that, Kyosuke asked curiously, why are you running so fast? Matt honestly replied, the headmaster told me to give you this letter. He repeated in puzzlement, a letter. His friend confirmed and handed it over here. Kyosuke calmly opened the letter to read. After reading it, he was somewhat frightened, his eyes widening. MTO leaned in curiously to see what the letter said, but Kyosuke quickly folded it and turned to leave. It's nothing. His friend stood confused and whispered, Master. Behind them, Suki was hiding behind a pillar, watching everything intently. Behind them, Suki was hiding behind a pillar, watching everything intently. DS noticed the movement and greeted, so you've arrived. Kyosuke looked at the figure ahead and asked calmly, KD Hill, why did you summon me here? He replied nonchalantly, yes, I know who you are. DS turned to face him, staring intently as he coldly exposed, Asai Kyosuke, Mr. Kyochiyuaki. Kyosuke did not confirm, only calmly asked again, did you call me here for that reason? Kyosuke did not confirm, only calmly asked again, did you call me here for that reason? DS unleashed power from his body, declaring in utter rage, I called you here to erase your existence from this world. Hearing that, Kyosuke replied in a cold voice, oh, we seem to feel the same way.